Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I thank the nominees for their service to the United States and their willingness to assume these important roles. I would also like to welcome the guests and family members who are with us today. Mr. Del Toro, I welcome your wife Betty and son Chris, and I thank Senator Warner for joining us to introduce you. Mr. Cisneros, I welcome your wife Jackie, and I thank Senator Kelly for his introduction. Ms. Miller, I welcome your husband Brian and thank former Congressman and Secretary of the Army John McHugh for his introduction via WebEx. Dr. Karlin, I welcome your husband Ruben. And Mr. Connor, I welcome your wife Shari and daughter Gabriella. Mr. Del Toro, you are well qualified to be the nominee for the Secretary of the Navy, given your distinguished service as a naval officer, years of senior leadership in the Department of Defense, and experience as the CEO of SBG Technology Solutions. Our naval forces are maintaining an extremely high operations tempo across all areas. The demand for attack submarines, air and missile defense cruisers, destroyers, and strike fighter inventories, and the logistics and maintenance associated with them is considerable. If confirmed, you will be responsible for recruiting, organizing, training, and equipping the force, and guiding policies and programs for the Navy and Marine Corps during this challenging time. Among the issues you will need to address is the readiness of the Navy and the continuing problems in maintaining its fleet. Deferred ship maintenance, reduced steaming and flying hours, and canceled training and deployments have created serious readiness problems. Cost overruns and delays in schedules have plagued both public and private shipyards, with impacts felt down to the individual soldier and Marine. We remember too well the collisions of the McCain and Fitzgerald and the loss of life that resulted. I would like to know what changes you will make to ensure such incidents do not happen in the future, and your plans for improving the capability and capacity to perform maintenance for Navy ships. Mr. Cisneros, if confirmed as Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, you will face many challenges in ensuring, first and foremost, that our military has adequate numbers of ready and trained service members of sufficiently high character and talent to meet our national defense objectives. You will be responsible for military and civilian personnel policy, military family and child care programs, the DoD-run school system, and working with the military services to ensure the health and welfare of the force. Your experience as a former military officer, member of Congress, philanthropist, and advocate for veterans should serve you well in this role. One of the many challenges that will require your immediate attention is the issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the military. As we know from the President's Independent Review Commission that studied sexual assault on ranks, there has been a dangerous erosion of trust and faith in leaders' ability to effectively address this issue. I would ask that you share your plans for addressing the problem. Ms. Miller, you are nominated to be the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller. You are well suited for this position, with decades of civil service and government experience, including a variety of financial and accounting positions within the Army. You have also served as the Associate Chief Financial Officer for the Internal Finance at the Internal Revenue Service. The Office of the Comptroller is instrumental in preparing and executing the Department's budget and ensuring the resources that Congress provides are allocated to the troops efficiently and effectively. Additionally, the Comptroller is a key player in the Department's efforts to achieve a clean audit and to modernize its financial management systems. If confirmed, your role will be critical in ensuring the FY22 budget is executed and the Department continues its efforts to achieve a clean audit. Dr. Karlin, you are nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities. You are highly qualified for this role, with decades of leadership in the Department of Defense and where you are currently serving as the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs. You also provided valuable leadership in U.S. national security through various roles at the RAND Corporation and the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. If confirmed, you will serve as the Principal Advisor to the Secretary of Defense on issues related to defense strategy. This includes issuing guidance to align resources and capabilities, as well as reviewing contingency plans necessary to implement the strategy. One of your first tasks will be to craft the 2022 National Defense Strategy, or NDS, and assess the current strategic environment, including the most critical and enduring threats to the national security of the United States and its allies. I would like to know how you will approach the NDS and assess the capabilities the joint force needed to prevail in long-term strategic competition with China and Russia. Finally, Mr. Connor, you are nominated to be Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. and if confirmed, you will be responsible for overseeing the civil functions of the Army, to include functions of the Army Corps of Engineers and various U.S. military cemeteries. Your prior service as Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior and as Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation should serve you well in this role. This committee has been concerned with the slow rate of Army construction projects, and I would ask that you share how you would improve its processes. Additionally, given the increasing importance of environmental resiliency to our national security, I would like to know your plans for incorporating climate projections in the planning and design of civil works projects. Thank you again to our nominees, and I look forward to your testimonies. Because of complications in travel, Senator Inhofe is not here today. He has asked me to introduce his opening statement, and without objection, the opening statement is introduced into the record. At this time, I would like to recognize Senator Warner for his introduction. Senator Warner, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all the members of the committee for their willingness to have me here this morning. And while I'm going to speak about my friend of over 30 years in a moment, I want to commend the President for nominating the whole panel here, who I think are extraordinarily well qualified. But I am incredibly proud and honored to join you this morning to introduce, and I know I'll be followed up by my good friend and colleague from Virginia, Tim Kaine, the President's choice to be our next Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Del Toro. Truth is, I've known Carlos and his wife, Betty, and Carlos and I were just talking a little bit, his eldest son, Christopher, I think, for close to 30 plus years.
Yes,
we first got involved long before I was elected to anything on a topic that is of deep importance to both of us, juvenile diabetes research. And in the 32 plus years since then, I've often leaned on Carlos's experience, both in the Navy and the private sector, when I've faced tough policy questions, both as governor and now as senator. It's also incredibly timely as we see the episodes taking place in Cuba, where we all stand with the people of Cuba. Carlos's story is uniquely American. After having immigrated to the United States from Cuba, he went on to attend the Naval Academy and serve multiple tours of duty across the globe, which included assignments as executive officer of a naval cruiser and as the pre-commissioning and commanding officer of the USS Buckley, an American destroyer. Subsequent to his career in the Navy, he was very involved, and I'm sure he'll speak to this as well, with the Presidential Fellowship Program. From his 26 years of military service to our nation, he has led sailors through times of conflicts and peace. Carlos knows the demands of service and how to lead and support our service members. He was lucky enough to marry Betty, who I hope he will speak about. Tim and I have fond stories of visiting socially with them at their home, them visiting with us. And I think we ought to recognize that Betty and their 4 kids has seen firsthand the experiences and challenges of our military families and the sacrifices they also are often asked to make on behalf of our nation. For his military service, Carlos was honored with the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, whose other recipients include 8 U.S. presidents and Nobel Prize winners. Following Carlos's retirement from the Navy in 2004, he founded a small IT business in Virginia. Over the past 17 years, he's grown that company while navigating all the challenges any startup small business has of meeting payroll, dealing with sometimes crazy government procurement records, and also making sure that he grew that company. His leadership on the private sector has received numerous awards. He's been named a top service disabled veteran-owned small business and a 2020 small business success story. As we think about the challenges our Navy faces on a geopolitical standpoint, and I see these, Mr. Chairman, as you know, more from the intel side, this distinguished committee sees it directly from the military side, we need someone who brings Carlos depth and breadth of understanding to be Secretary of Navy at this critical time. But I'll close in a moment. Just the I go on with a long list of Carlos's attributes, but this is a man of enormous, enormous character. He is a proud American. He loves our Navy. He loves this country. And what that character, I think, really will be incredibly important for Secretary of the Navy at this moment in time. He will be an incredible leader and leader of, but also advocate for the most important asset our Navy has. And that is not necessarily our ships or technology, but the men and women who serve. At this moment in time, with all the challenges our country faces here and abroad on a whole host of fronts, I can think of no one better suited to take on this critically important role. I have known this man and his family for over 30 years. I speak with unquestionable conviction that he brings the character, the intellect, and the experience to be a great Secretary of the Navy, and I urge this committee's favorable consideration of his nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to Carlos and others. I've actually got to run to an intel session, but thank you again for the opportunity to appear.
Thank you, Senator Warner. Now let me recognize Senator Kelly for his introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be here this morning, and it's also my great pleasure to introduce Gil Cisneros, nominee to serve as the next Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. I've known Gil and his wife Jackie for a number of years. Gil is a fellow Navy veteran, enlisting in the United States Navy in 1989 after he graduated from high school. He was then commissioned an officer in the United States Navy in 1994 through what's called the Boost program. And after a decade of service, Gil left the Navy and entered the private sector. He and his wife Jackie have dedicated much of their energy to giving back, with a focus on philanthropic endeavors and especially helping students access higher education. Gil was later elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where he served on both the Veterans Affairs and the Armed Services Committees. That service touched on a number of issues relevant to the portfolio he would assume as Undersecretary, including addressing mental health and suicide, and supporting military families both during and after military service. The Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness plays a critical role in supporting the well-being of our defense civilians, service members, and their families, who also make tremendous sacrifices in service of our country. It manages the Department of Defense's education and healthcare benefits programs and oversees matters related to morale and quality of life of our service members, while also ensuring the readiness of our forces to meet emerging threats and the demands of resurging great power competition. My 25 years in the Navy taught me that the real strength of our military, the thing that sets us apart from others, is our people. Our continued success depends on supporting our people, giving them the tools to do their jobs, and always having their backs. In this role, that means making sure that the housing and benefits and other support programs deliver what our service members and their families need. Finally, the Undersecretary will play a pivotal role in shaping our nation's use of the total force, including our National Guard and Reserve components. In a year that saw more Guard activations than at any time since World War II, our country has asked a lot of our National Guard, from natural disasters to deployments to D.C., and in my home state, the continued deployment to the border to support law enforcement operations. For all these reasons and more, this role deserves a confirmed and qualified, dedicated Undersecretary who can tackle these challenges in support of our service members. All of us look forward to hearing more about your vision for carrying out this role, and I look forward to working with you and your team to support our great men and women in uniform. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for serving again. Really appreciate it, Gil. Mr. Chairman, My remainder.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Now, let me recognize via WebEx former Secretary of the Army, John McHugh. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all the distinguished members of the committee. And let me begin by expressing my deep appreciation for the opportunity, but really the honor of introducing you to President Biden's nominee to serve as Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller Kathleen Miller. When I first went to the Pentagon to serve as Army Secretary in 2009, Kathleen had already earned a deserved reputation as a high performer, someone who, no matter the challenge or how difficult the task, would get the job done. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, she's had a long career in the public sector, much of that in the financial management area, as exemplified by her first federal job in 2002 with the Internal Revenue Service. But Kathleen moved to the Pentagon in 2005, where her skills and talent were immediately recognized and resulting in repeated advancements and expanded responsibilities. In 2009, Kathy held one of the most important jobs in the area of Army financial management. She served as acting director of ABO, the Army Budget Office. And in that role, she helped lead our efforts to more responsibly develop detailed resource management strategies, even going so far as to helping us close a $6 billion mid-year funding gap that allowed us to make more sufficient investments in our warfighters, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. And in 2009, I was immediately impressed with her cool and nimble head and her very agile mind. And at my first opportunity in 2010, I eagerly promoted Kathleen to serve as Assistant Chief of Staff G4 for logistics. That's a civilian rank equivalent to a 3-star general with enormous responsibilities in one of the most important Army offices. And every day thereafter, I knew the G4 would be run at the highest levels of effectiveness and efficiency. And I really became convinced that Kathleen's lived by that old TV commercial line, never let them see you sweat. I never saw her lose her composure or lose control of herself or the situation. And that's a skill set, as you know, Mr. Chairman, that's not always easily maintained in the often hectic corridors of the Pentagon. You really don't have to take my word for it. My successors as well recognized and valued Kathleen's skills, repeatedly advancing her to a point where today she serves in a position that's generally held to be the most senior civilian posting in the Army, Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of the Army, where she oversees an Army-wide enterprise of some 700 military, civilian, and contractor personnel. And her good work has been recognized by her many awards, including a Meritorious Presidential Rank Award and a Distinguished Presidential Rank Award, to name just two. But she's received high and repeated praise, all hard-earned and all well-deserved. But as important as they are, resumes really just give you a glimpse as to a person's character, as to their frame of mind, how they view life and work. And so what are those things that really do set Kathleen Miller apart? Well, maybe it was her rural upstate kind of common sense, feet on the ground upbringing that first taught her the values and the need for honesty and hard work and caring about others. Maybe it was the knowledge and the wisdom she acquired through her extensive studies, earning a bachelor's degree from Cornell University and 2 master's degrees from Syracuse University and the Army War College. Or maybe, and perhaps most likely, it was the love, encouragement, and sense of service that she received from her family at an early age that truly set her apart. Her father, Pat, who has sadly passed, served as a Navy pilot. Her mom, Shirley, who I'm told is watching this hearing from the Blueberry Farm back in New York, is a retired nurse. And we've learned over the last 16 months or so how amazing those people are. And her husband, who's there with you today, Brian Pickerel, a Navy veteran as well, a Cornell ROTC grad. And when you mix all of these qualities together, you get an outstanding public servant who for nearly 20 years has served the public, and for the last 15 years has served faithfully the the people who wear the uniform of the United States Army. And in short, you get Kathleen Miller, a very special individual. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I respectfully urge your favorable consideration of a truly worthy nominee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, thank you, Secretary McHugh. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Del Toro for his opening statement. You might hold off a sec. Okay, I think we're back now to normal transmission. Go ahead, Mr. Del Toro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Inhofe in his absence, and distinguished members of the committee. I am honored to appear before you as President Biden's nominee for Secretary of the Navy. I am grateful for your consideration of my nomination, and I hope that this hearing will help earn your trust. I want to thank Senator Warner in his absence for his kind words of introduction. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I would like to quickly again recognize and introduce to the committee my wife of 38 years, Betty, who will undoubtedly serve as a constant reminder to me of the sacrifices of military families, as long as she has my ear, and I assure you that she always will. Betty will undoubtedly serve as a constant reminder to me of the sacrifices of military families. I also want to thank my beloved children, including my eldest son, Chris, who was mentioned earlier, who is here with us today, and my other sons, Marcel, Bryce, and John, who could not be here today. They all collectively put up with 17 moves over 22 years in the Navy, and I thank them for that and much more. Mr. Chairman, I am honored to testify before you, and I'm grateful to President Biden and Secretary Austin for extending me this potential opportunity to again serve our sailors, our Marines, our Navy civilian personnel, their families, and our nation. As President Biden said in his interim national security strategic guidance, democracy holds the keys to freedom, prosperity, peace, and dignity. I know the value of freedom and democracy because I was born in a country, Cuba, with neither. As a child, my family and I fled an autocratic communist regime and settled in our new home, the United States of America. At age 17, I joined the Navy and served proudly for 26 years. The United States Navy Marine Corps team is sacred to our basic freedoms and to our national security. Should this committee and this Senate vote to confirm me, I will always remember and honor what we are sworn to protect and defend. As President Biden has previously stated, our nation is at an inflection point, and we face challenges as severe as they are unprecedented. China, with its autocratic system and its determined incursion into the South China Sea and globally, presents a constant naval threat. Russia and other resurgent powers also threaten our global stability. Our adversaries aggressively target the Arctic theater, where we must continue being vigilant despite its harsh operating conditions. We must meet these challenges from a position of demonstrated strength and unity. China's rising military expenditures, fueled by a growing economy, coupled with their global adventurism, means that we can no longer take U.S. naval superiority for granted. Access to contested waters requires more robust capabilities and capacity. This demands new thinking about how we invest our defense dollars. I was pleased to see the President's budget request recognize this challenge and invest billions of dollars towards improving readiness and future capabilities. If confirmed, I look forward to advancing these capabilities to ensure that our Navy Marine Corps team has what it needs to project strength and provide a credible deterrent to China and any other adversaries. The climate crisis also demands U.S. Navy investment precisely because it exacerbates every other challenge that our Navy faces, including great power competition. Already, installation resilience is an issue with vital installations facing threats from rising sea levels. Building energy and environmental resilience into our installations will make them more combat effective. If confirmed, I look forward to working with our community partners at home and abroad with Congress to address these complicated issues. As Secretary Austin has repeatedly stated, we must build teamwork and always care for those that defend our nation. We must continue to build a Navy Marine Corps team where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. We must recruit from the widest possible talent pool. Diversity of experience, thought, and background always makes for a more combat-effective team. If confirmed, I look forward to working with our leadership to make every sailor, Marine, civilian in the department feel safe, welcome, and included. Creating such a force also means we must hold accountable those that do not treat others with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are. There is also the inexcusable issue of military sexual harassment and assault. It must end. I appreciate the recommendations of the Independent Review Commission on sexual assault in the military, and if confirmed, I will work closely with the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Defense and the Congress to find impactful solutions. In closing, I again thank our sailors, our Marines, our civilian personnel, and their families, whose professionalism, commitment, and abilities never cease to amaze me. I also thank my parents in heaven for summoning the courage to leave Cuba and communism with me in tow as an infant, and for having both worked 2 jobs most of their lives so that my brother Robert and I could live and prosper in freedom. To President Biden and Secretary Austin, thank you for entrusting me with a sacred duty to support the men and women who defend our nation's interests and our citizens. I look forward to answering your questions, and I hope earning your trust as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm told there might be some technical difficulties about the witnesses hearing from the podium. We're working on those right now, but let me recognize Mr. Cisneros, please.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of the committee. I am humbled to be in front of you today. I enjoyed working with many of you while in Congress, meeting others leading up to this hearing, and I appreciate your willingness to consider my nomination for Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. I want to thank my wife, Jackie, who is here today, for her continued support, and our twin 7-year-old boys, Alexander and Christopher, for their support and lack of dad time. Though they could not join us here today, I am hopeful they are at least watching part of this hearing, even if Personnel and Readiness Management does not hold their attention. I am also grateful to President Biden and Secretary Austin for the confidence they have placed in me. My family has a history of service to our country. My grandfathers both served in World War II. My godfather served in Korea. My father and uncle served in Vietnam. I followed their example of service and enlisted in the United States Navy at 18 years old. Today, I'm also reminded of my grandmothers who, despite having not much education, showed me how to care for others and put them first. I come before you seeking to continue their legacy. Caring for the people who make up the Department of Defense total force is a sacred responsibility. Service members, civilians, and their families bravely sacrifice in defense of our nation. Regular moves, irregular deployments, and the occasional impromptu all-hands meeting require military families to put country first, making difficult trade-offs regarding where they live, what careers they pursue, and where they educate their kids. Though DoD civilians generally have greater stability than their military counterparts, they also sacrifice pay and flexibility in pursuit of a greater mission. Having gotten to know many of the folks serving our country, I can tell you nothing inspires me more than hearing why people with vastly different backgrounds choose to serve. For all the things that divide us as a nation, there are still millions of service members and civilians who put the team, the mission, and our country before anything else. They do it because they care. They want to be part of something larger, and they want to be surrounded by the best of our country. The Undersecretary of Personnel and Readiness is responsible for allowing the service members, civilians, and families who serve to do so to their fullest potential. If I am lucky enough to be confirmed, I would have 3 core principles. First, I would ensure that we are doing everything we can to recruit and retain the right people with the right skills to deal with emerging challenges. I understand this committee has been especially focused on the cyber domain. If confirmed, I intend to make sure we are using the new authorities in that area. Second, I want to make sure we are taking advantage of our country's greatest asset, our people, to build the most capable, effective force possible. This means our force should look like the country we serve, with different racial, religious, gender, and sexual identities, as well as diverse political, ideological, and geographic backgrounds. To attract and retain all those who want to serve and can meet the high standards, we need to create workplaces free of discrimination, sexual assault, and other mission detractors. This committee has paid particular attention to sexual assault and harassment, a focus I shared as a member of the House Armed Services Committee and an issue I am personally committed to. If confirmed, I will look forward to working with this committee to implement new accountability and prevention measures that make a lasting difference. Finally, if confirmed, I would be committed to ensuring our forces are ready to face current threats while preparing for long-range challenges. I am optimistic that the department can take advantage of a reduction in operational tempo to continue rebuilding for great power competition. However, our adversaries cannot perceive rebuilding as a weakness, and I am committed to ensuring the Secretary has the information to make decisions that balance these concerns. I believe my experience with assistance from the Department's outstanding civil servants would allow me to serve well in this role if confirmed. My service in the Navy as both an enlisted sailor and officer of color gives me unique perspective into our military. I was an active member of the House Armed Services Committee and the Military Personnel and Sea Power subcommittees. There I worked hard to learn the issues and how they impacted my constituents, developing a record of caring for our service members and their families. I relish the opportunity to again work for them and for our country. If confirmed, I look forward to working with this committee to achieve our shared goals and ensure the people who make up the total force remain the most ready and capable in the world. Thank you for the chance to appear in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Cisneros. Ms. Miller, please.
Yes, good morning. Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. I know from my role as a senior career Army official how vitally important the bipartisan work of this committee is to our nation and to all the men and women of the Department of Defense. I appreciate and am grateful for your service and honored by your consideration of my nomination to serve as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller. Secretary McHugh, sir, thank you for your warm introduction. I appreciated working under your leadership during your tenure as Secretary of the Army. I also want to express my deep gratitude to President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary Austin, Deputy Secretary Hicks, and Undersecretary McCord for their trust and confidence in me and their support of my nomination. I'd also like to express appreciation to all those who serve this nation, both in uniform and out, for their unwavering dedication to our democracy. I would like to express a sincere and heartfelt thank you to the many appointees, civil servants, military personnel who took time to mentor, teach, and encourage me throughout my career. I am grateful for the support of my extended family and friends. First and foremost, my husband, Brian Pickerel, a Navy veteran and fellow Cornell graduate. He is my rock and my harbor, and he is here with me today. Also, my parents, Pat and Shirley Miller, who taught me the values of hard work, persistence, truth, and compassion. Mom is watching from her farm in upstate New York, and while Dad is no longer with us, as a former Navy pilot, I think he would be very pleased to see his eldest daughter here today before you. I'd also like to thank my siblings, in-laws, and our friends for the love, support, and encouragement they've given me in this process. I was a student at the Army War College on 9/11. That horrible day, nearly 20 years ago, cemented my passion for public service and my belief in a strong national defense using all elements of national power. Since then, I have led large, diverse federal organizations, and some of my key accomplishments include implementing new financial systems at the Internal Revenue Service, building and executing Army budgets, implementing Army logistics systems, and overseeing numerous reform activities. In my current role, the team I lead executes Army-wide administrative programs and provides support services, including human resources, financial management, and facilities for the Army's headquarters. I've been recognized by 2 different presidents with a prestigious Presidential Rank Award for my contributions. My top priority, if confirmed, is enabling the continued security of this nation through the work of the Department of Defense Comptroller, building adequate, defendable budgets, providing Congress accurate and timely information about those budgets, and stewarding the resources authorized for and appropriated to the department. I will, if confirmed, prioritize a strong relationship with the congressional committees on all matters under the purview of the comptroller. I will, if confirmed, also give full effort and attention to the department's financial audit, building on the progress made to obtain a clean opinion. I will, if confirmed, further the department's performance improvement work, making DoD more effective through workforce development, the expanded use of technology, and data-informed decision processes. Finally, I will continue serving as a role model to the military members, civilians, and contractors of the department, leading with compassion, commitment, respect, and integrity. I am truly honored to be here today. Thank you again for your service to the nation, and for considering my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Now let me recognize Ms. Karlin.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and members of the committee.
Microphone, please.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. It is an honor to be here alongside my fellow Department of Defense nominees and in front of a committee whose active, thoughtful, and bipartisan approach to critical national security issues is admirable. I am grateful to President Biden, Secretary Austin, and Deputy Secretary Hicks for their trust in my ability to serve as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities. I would like to take a moment to recognize the family, friends, colleagues, and mentors who have supported me. In particular, thank you to my parents, Charlene and Husheng, who are watching this hearing from Wisconsin, my siblings, my husband, and my children and my extended family for their endless support and love. When this country welcomed my dad from Iran, he immediately knew how lucky he was. And both he and my mom made sure we always understood and remembered that. I began my national security career as an intern and then as a civil servant in the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Policy during the Bush administration. And I have since served in a variety of roles throughout the Pentagon for 6 Secretaries of Defense. If confirmed, I would be honored to return to the Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities team as the Assistant Secretary of Defense. In addition to my time in the Pentagon, I was a professor and director of strategic studies at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, worked at think tanks, and wrote 2 books on military history and defense policy. My academic background and strategic planning experience at the department will inform my approach to this key role if confirmed. The Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities is at the tip of the spear for the department in designing and implementing the National Defense Strategy. This is a responsibility that I take very seriously. I appreciate that the members of this committee have played an instrumental role in recognizing the shift towards strategic competition as outlined in the 2018 National Defense Strategy. Indeed, I worked closely with Secretary Mattis's staff to host him at Johns Hopkins for the release of the National Defense Strategy, and I served as a staff member of the National Defense Strategy Commission. Both are a testament of how critically I view these efforts. If confirmed, I would be honored to help craft the department's vision of the future security environment, articulate objectives and priorities, and apply this strategy to future investments and activities, including the FY 2023 budget and our military force posture. We have an obligation to ensure that our plans, posture, and partnerships are predicated on sound strategy and adequate resourcing. If confirmed, I hope to support the Secretary in articulating and executing this vision. Ensuring the National Defense Strategy's effective implementation will be critical, and I look forward to partnering with members on this committee throughout that process. Nuclear deterrence would also be a top priority if confirmed, and I appreciate that members of this committee are rightfully invested in ensuring that nuclear modernization initiatives account for a changing global threat picture. Our nuclear forces remain essential to prevent our adversaries from ever employing nuclear weapons. If confirmed, I would work toward ensuring that our nuclear deterrent is safe, reliable, and effective, not only to deter China, Russia, and North Korea, but also to ensure credibility with our closest allies. In my current role as the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, I have the privilege of serving as a principal advisor to Secretary Austin on issues related to international security strategy and policy. I am grateful for his steadfast leadership and commitment to amplifying civilian voices within the Pentagon. If confirmed, I would work alongside the Secretary to elevate civilian leaders while working in close coordination with my military colleagues at the Joint Staff, Combatant Commands, and Military Services. I recognize the many challenges that we face and have great respect for the work of this committee and your thoughtful oversight of the department. If afforded the opportunity to serve in this capacity, I commit to consulting with Congress to shape and implement our defense strategy and to ensure that our approach is aligned with our mission. Our military and the American people deserve no less from their senior defense leaders. I look forward to your questions and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Karlin. Now let me recognize Mr. Carner, please.
Thank you. Chairman Reed, distinguished members of the committee, I am honored to appear before you today as President Biden's nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I am grateful and appreciative of your consideration of my nomination today. And thank you for the opportunity to recognize my daughter, Gabriella, who's here with me today. She, along with my wife, Sherry, and son, Matthew, have made sacrifices over the years that have allowed me to engage in public service for some time now. I deeply appreciate their support. The Assistant Secretary for the Army for Civil Works is an important position under any circumstances, given the responsibilities of the Corps of Engineers for infrastructure, ecosystem health, maintaining waterways, managing flood risks, and protecting wetlands. These are incredibly important functions for communities across the nation. Today, these responsibilities take on new significance amid the backdrop of a pandemic-impacted economy that must also build resiliency to the effects of climate change, and while ensuring equity amongst the communities being served. I am humbled to be nominated to work with the military leadership of the Corps and the talented civilian workforce to carry out these important responsibilities. I also believe I am well prepared to address the challenges ahead, given my extensive experience both inside and outside of government. As a former Deputy Secretary of the Interior Department and Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, I directed strategy and managed a large federal water resources agency responsible for facilities and programs similar to those of the Corps. My prior positions also provided extensive experience working directly with the Corps of Engineers. At Reclamation, we collaborated in developing climate resilient strategies, coordinating flood control and water management operations, protecting endangered species and engaging in river restoration, and advancing dam safety risk management efforts. As Deputy Secretary, I worked with the Corps in its role as a regulator and even collaborated on an international issue involving poorly maintained infrastructure that threatened the United States' interests in the Middle East. And as counsel to the Senate and Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I worked on numerous legislative initiatives related to the Corps. I believe this experience, coupled with my background as both an engineer and a lawyer, provide a unique set of qualifications to be an effective Assistant Secretary of the Army. If confirmed, my personal background will also inform my views as I oversee the vast responsibilities associated with the Corps. I grew up in New Mexico, a state rich in natural resources, with the exception of water. I am proud of my Native American heritage and my roots in an agricultural community, Las Cruces, New Mexico. I grew up witnessing the important role the federal government plays in supporting and protecting the economic foundation of many communities while providing access to the recreational resources that enhance the quality of life of our citizens. If confirmed, I will be focused and committed to the work necessary to fulfill my responsibilities and meet the challenges facing the Corps and its stakeholders, your constituents. Of course, the Corps cannot be successful on its own, and my years in public service have reinforced the importance of collaboration. I commit to the task with a sense of humility and a keen understanding of the need to work with state and local leaders, the public, affected stakeholders, and members of Congress to most effectively carry out the Corps of Engineers mission. I am equally committed to increasing coordination within the federal government, a whole government approach that is more effective and efficient in addressing the effects of a changing landscape across the country. Finally, with your support, I will be proud to join a department led by Secretary Austin, Deputy Secretary Hicks, and Secretary Wormuth, who have made clear their intent to lead with transparency, integrity, and the highest ethical standards in carrying out the Defense Department's and the Army's vital missions. I am equally committed to these principles. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. There are a series of questions which all civilian nominees must respond to. You may do so simultaneously. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibility makes it important that this committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Del Toro, as the Secretary of the Navy, you have huge responsibilities. One area is the introduction of new unmanned vessels into the fleet, which many feel could be one of the more decisive technological revolutions that are taking place right now. But what we have heard is that the appropriate systems engineering, development of propulsion and communication systems that would be needed to make these unmanned systems operate in the fleet has had some concerns. And I'd like to get your assurance that you will not approve plans to shortchange the orderly development activities in order to accelerate fielding of these unmanned systems, i.e. we've got to get the science and technology right. Would that be your position?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and let me reinforce how critically important unmanned systems will be for the future combat effectiveness of our capabilities, and particularly in the Indo-Pacific as well, too. It's important first to ensure that we have the right concept of operations to fully integrate them with our existing concepts of operations for the use of naval military forces. It's equally important to ensure that they're fully integrated with all of our existing platforms, air, surface, and subsurface as well, too. And so it's incredibly important, Chairman, and I will ensure that we do not advance those technologies until they're ready to do so.
Mr. Cisneros, Secretary Austin has presented to the Congress, and the administration has supported his presentation, significant changes in the Uniform Code of Military Justice regarding sexual assault and other matters. Doing this would require time and resources. The major military justice reform enacted in 2017 required a 2-year implementation time frame, every bit of which was needed. And critical to this process is the fact the President must republish the manual for courts-martial and ensure that ongoing investigations and prosecutions are not jeopardized by rushed implementation. As we move through this legislative year, do you commit to keep the committee informed of your assessment of the time, resources, and the qualified personnel necessary to effectively implement any changes that Congress would introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for that question. Yes, I commit to supporting Secretary Austin in implementing these new recommendations, and as well as keeping the committee informed as the process and the status of those ongoing process of those, getting those completed.
And with your experience as a naval officer and as a naval enlisted man, do you understand that this is just one aspect of a multiple challenge of prevention, changing climate and culture, and ultimately leadership? And will you push hard for those changes?
Yes, Senator. There is a culture shift that needs to happen, and I commit to working with the branches and the various branches, the different branches of service, to help implement those cultures throughout the DoD, both civilian and military.
Thank you. Ms. Karlin, one of your major responsibilities will be drafting the National Defense Strategy, the NDS. We are in a competition with China and Russia. Everyone admits that. But the notion of, quote, strategic competition is not particularly well defined. What recommendations would you have as you approach the next NDS for much more specifically defining strategic competition, the long-range strategic objectives we have vis-a-vis China and Russia?
Senator Reid, I thought the 2018 National Defense Strategy was an exceptional document, and if confirmed, I would seek to build on it with the 2022 National Defense Strategy. if I were to have the opportunity to work on it, I would absolutely want to focus on the point you're driving home. How do we understand what strategic competition is? What is the appropriate role for the Department of Defense in that competition? And what is the appropriate role for the broader interagency?
Thank you very much. Senator Wicker.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Del Toro, let me talk to you for a few moments. As Secretary of the Navy, you'll have a good fortune of receiving military advice from the Chief of Naval Operations and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Our nation's current leaders, those two gentlemen in these positions, have a combined 75 years of experience in the Navy and Marine Corps, respectively. Do you plan to have a close relationship with the Navy and Marine Corps service chiefs, and will you listen to their professional military advice, and will you advocate on behalf of the Navy and the Marine Corps to the Secretary of Defense?
Senator, there's probably no more important issue than that. The Navy Marine Corps team must effectively work as a team. And I have deep respect for the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the Chief of Naval Operations. And if confirmed, I will coordinate and seek their advice on every issue that's before us and before the Congress. It's simply incredibly important for us to be able to work as a team. And for me, if confirmed, as the Chief Executive Officer of the Department of the Navy, to provide that leadership and guidance to them as well, too, as to the actions and to affect the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead for us.
If they give you advice concerning additional needs that are not yet proposed, I hope you will feel free and obligated, actually, to pass that along to the appointed leadership. Let me also ask you this about the 355-ship Navy, which is a part of the statute enacted by the Congress and signed into law by the President of the United States. Admiral Gilday has explained in recent hearings that based on the top line in this administration's budget request, we can afford a Navy of only about 300 ships, not the 355 in the statute. In fact, given the Navy's decommissioning plan, in the immediate future, that number would drop to 290, not 355. At the same time, the CNO has maintained publicly that the Navy has to grow to meet the challenges of an aggressive China and a resurgent Russia. And he has stated that the statutory requirement for a 355-ship Navy remains an important goal. So, Mr. Del Toro, the Admiral who will serve as your principal advisor for the Navy is on record stating that we need a larger Navy in order to compete with the global competitors like China. Do you agree with him? And if so, what would be your plan to grow the Navy given the current budget constraints?
Senator, this is an incredibly important issue, and I fully support the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act that has as a goal 355-ship Navy. I believe that as our nation shifts from a land-based strategy over the past 20 years, fighting the wars in the Middle East, to a more dominant maritime strategy in the Pacific, particularly in our efforts to deter China, I do believe that our Navy Marine Corps team will need additional resources to be able to fully field the combat effectiveness we will need as a nation to do so. And I am committed, in fact, that it's my responsibility to make that case to the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the administration moving forward in the fiscal year 23 budget, if confirmed.
Well, you know, actually, I think everyone should remember that the 355 is not something that came out of the minds of the Congress. It was listed as a requirement by the admirals and generals out there who are actually doing the work to make our nation secure. Let me say that I was particularly pleased with one thing in your statement, and I was concerned about another thing in your statement. You say our nation is at an inflection point, and we face challenges as severe as they are unprecedented in China with its authoritarian system and its determined incursion in the South China Sea, and globally presents a constant naval threat. Russia and other resurgent powers also threaten stability. That is a true statement, and I agree with it. I find it ironic that you would then say a few sentences later, I was pleased to see the president's budget request recognize this challenge. I don't agree that it does, and I can just tell you, Mr. Del Toro, that I think there's a bipartisan majority on both sides of the aisle and on both sides of the dais in this committee to help you find more resources to do exactly what you said is necessary vis-a-vis China and Russia and other threats that we have, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Let me recognize Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, and congratulations to each of our nominees this morning. Thank you for your previous service and for your willingness to continue to serve if confirmed in these important posts. I want to begin also with you, Mr. Del Toro. Last week, Senator King and I went with Deputy Secretary Kath Hicks to the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, which is shared between New Hampshire and Maine. And one of the things we looked at was one of the first shipyard infrastructure optimization projects that is in the works at the shipyard to more than double its dry dock capacity, make it much more efficient. They are making great progress. It was very impressive to see what's happening there. Unfortunately, there are also significant cost overruns with the project. Now, if we're going to keep our nuclear subs operating, we've got to ensure that this project gets completed. So I would ask you, if confirmed, what steps do you intend to immediately take to ensure that this project remains on schedule and to address future cost overruns?
Senator, it's incredibly important to ensure that all of our platforms, all of our projects remain on cost and on schedule. As a small business owner for the past 17 years, I know the value of a dollar, and if confirmed, I understand the responsibility that I would have as Secretary of the Navy to ensure the return on investment that the American taxpayers make in supporting our Navy. It's incredibly important, and I have tremendous amount of experience both in the Navy and in the private sector in managing projects. It's incredibly important to ensure that, for one, requirement creeps don't interfere with the continuing cost of projects. Having the right program managers in place and the right oversight from their leadership to ensure that these projects stay on track. And when we identify problems that are challenging problems, that we immediately pay attention to them and take necessary actions to correct them. So it takes a team to make that happen. They have to have the support from their senior civilian leadership in the military, in the military as well, for it to be an effective solution. So as someone who has actually managed projects for 40 years, I look forward to the challenge, if confirmed, to be able to work with my teammates in the Navy Marine Corps team to be able to do that.
Well, I appreciate that sentiment and hope that you and Admiral Gilday will come back to this committee with specific measures that you're taking to address the potential cost overruns. As you know, our 4 public shipyards are critical to ensuring that our Navy remains operational and competitive. Dr. Karlin, I was pleased to hear President Biden address steps that the administration is taking to help our Afghan allies who work so hard alongside of our troops for the last 20 years. As you know, we've had a backlog of special immigrant visa requests for years to help get those Afghan allies out of harm's way. Right now, we have thousands in the queue. So can you talk about what you would like to see, if confirmed, to help ensure that we can make sure that those Afghans who helped us aren't threatened by the Taliban, them and their families, and then killed?
Senator, my understanding is that there's an extremely robust effort across the department and indeed the interagency on this exact important issue that you raise. And if confirmed, I would absolutely prioritize, frankly, our unparalleled network of allies and partners, which is not only the right thing to do, but it also is what sets us apart from strategic competitors.
Well, thank you. I keep hearing about the robust effort, but we haven't seen the particulars on that effort, and I think it would be very important for Congress to see exactly what the administration is proposing. So I would urge you to look into that as soon as possible if confirmed. Can I also ask you about what other measures you think that we can take to help address the threat to Afghan women and girls now that we are withdrawing our troops?
I think it is critical that we maintain a relationship with the Afghan government and with our Afghan partners. I believe the President and the Secretary of Defense have been quite clear on that. We have seen tremendous gains by Afghan women and girls in particular over the last 2 decades, and along with our closest allies and partners, it will be important to continue helping them.
I agree, and I hope you will do everything possible to try and address that need. One of the things I've heard from women leaders in Afghanistan is that the more Americans can speak out at a high level about the threat, the more helpful they see it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Heen. Let me recognize Senator Ernst, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being here and for your commitment to our great United States of America. And Mr. Cisneros, if I could start with you, please. The Preservation of the Force and Family program, which is being led by our Special Operations Forces, really should be introduced to the whole of our Department of Defense. And this program supports many different domains. So your physical, mental, cognitive, family, and psychological health of our greatest assets, which are our service members. And can I have your commitment that you will work across the Defense Department to implement aspects of this program to provide the best care to those who serve?
Senator, I couldn't agree more that the people that are serving our military are our greatest assets, and them and their families sacrifice so much. And if confirmed, you have my commitment that I will work with this committee and within the department to do what we can to best serve our people and make sure that we're taking care of their needs.
Thank you very much. It's been a highly successful program within SOCOM, and again, would love to see that pressed out DoD-wide, at least those pieces that we can implement as soon as possible. So thank you for that commitment. And then moving on, Ms. Miller, I always ask questions about the health of our finances at DoD. And of course, DoD has maintained a very robust budget for many, many years, yet they have struggled to pass a financial audit. And in a time where the administration is looking to flatten the defense budget, we really do need to make sure that every dime of taxpayer dollars are used appropriately within DoD and that they're used effectively to outpace our adversaries. So can you please explain how you would intend to ensure the department gives their full effort and attention to a financial audit?
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. I'll start by saying that I believe the benefit of the financial audit is not just from the in-state audit report, but from the process that we move through to understand our material weaknesses and fix them, to understand where our financial systems are compliant with generally accepted accounting principles and where they're not, to fix them. And so in the process of moving through an audit, we're going to find places where we can improve our business processes and hopefully gain some efficiencies. I was very pleased to read the 2020 audit statement and see that the number of material weaknesses have been reduced, that we did have 24 full independent audits. We had 8 unmodified opinions in those audits. And so I hope to, if confirmed, build upon the progress that has been laid down in the audit area and continue to move us closer to that goal, using the outcome of the audit findings to bring efficiencies to the department.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. It is important. And I think the way you described it is quite apt in that, the findings along the way, but correcting those deficiencies as we go, it is part of the process. And while I don't know that we will ever achieve a 100% clean audit at the DoD, there is obviously strength in working towards that and correcting as we go. I appreciate your outlook on that. And I do think that we can continually improve our finances, financial well-being at the DoD and making sure that we are protecting our taxpayers. So that's fantastic. But under the constraints of the flat budget, of course, then that gives the department a number of challenges as well. How can we continue to innovate and develop these new capabilities to meet our strategic needs within your realm?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I believe that if confirmed, the first thing I would want to do is get a briefing on the detailed audit plans that are in progress so that I have a better understanding of where we should focus our efforts to gain the most benefit upfront as soon as possible. So I have not had the ability to see those audit plans in detail yet, but if confirmed, I would do that and look to focus and sharpen our approach to the audit in an atmosphere of potentially flat budgets.
And certainly we do have challenges as well with the different types of tracking and data systems within DoD. I know that has been an issue in the past, but certainly, if you are confirmed, I look forward to working with you and assisting any way that I can. So thanks to all of our witnesses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gillibrand, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for testifying today, and thank you for your commitment to serving others. It really does make a difference. I'd like to direct my first two questions to Mr. Cisneros and Mr. Del Toro. As you know, President Biden asked Secretary Austin to commit a review to how to deal with sexual assault better. The recommendation from the commission of all the crimes they looked at was to remove every single one of them out of the chain of command. And they did that because they believe that professionalization and an unbiased review by a trained military prosecutor would do two things. One, create more confidence in the system that it was being done professionally, and two, remove bias that is somehow undermining the system overall. For example, despite this committee's 8 years of intense focus on reducing the rate of sexual assault to the military and increasing the rate of prosecution and conviction, unfortunately, the rate of sexual assaults has stayed steady at about 20,000, but the rate of cases going to trial and the rate of cases ending in conviction have sadly continued to decline. So we're not getting better on any measurable. We also have data and statistics about racial bias within the military. The Marines are perhaps have the worst data. For Marines, Black Marines are 2.61 times more likely than white Marines to be found guilty at general courts-martial proceedings that are, quote, typically reserved for the most serious offenses and for which guilty findings carry more severe ramifications. We also see across-the-board racial bias at approximately two times more punishment for Black and Brown service members across all services. So this committee's been working on solutions for the past 8 years. We've had multiple hearings, and the solution that 66 members of the Senate have agreed on is that to have a bright line at all felonies, to make sure that these types of crimes are taken out of the chain of command, given to trained military prosecutors to eliminate bias, and to make sure the most professional decisions are being made. The bright line is something that has been done by our allies. It's been done in Israel, the UK, Germany, Netherlands, Australia, Canada. And they did it for defendants' rights because they believed if you could be put to jail for more than a year of your life, you deserved an unbiased professional review. So military justice experts have recommended a bright line. We carved out uniquely military crimes, such as going AWOL, such as not following an order, but we leave in place all serious crimes. And as you know, there was a recent report out of Fort Hood saying that the command climate there was so toxic that it was permissible for both sexual assault and sexual harassment. That report was because a woman named Vanessa Guillen was murdered. We have a record that she had been harassed. And we know that she was murdered. There are many cases where women are murdered and are also experiencing things as sexual assault and sexual harassment within the ranks. And so the bright line does two things. One, it creates the professionalization that we hope will fix the sexual assault problem, but two, it makes sure that defendants have rights for our service members. President Biden has said in the past that he would remove all serious crimes from the chain of command, including murder, and he had accepted the recommendations of this military commission. So I have two questions for both of you. One, will you support President Biden's commitment to take sexual assault and related crimes out of the chain of command?
Senator, yes, I believe that's the direction that what he's suggested and they're moving, and I will do what I can, if confirmed, to support that.
Senator, first let me thank you for all the efforts that you've done. You've shown tremendous courage and conviction in raising this incredibly important issue across the nation and in our military services. As a commanding officer who actually served on one of the first mixed-gender crews on the USS Bulkley, there is no greater responsibility than to care for the men and women who serve under your command, so I applaud your efforts. With regards to your question, I fully support the Secretary's independent review committee and all the recommendations that they've made. I know that the Deputy Secretary of Defense is putting together an action plan to implement all those recommendations, and I intend to fully cooperate with all recommendations that come out of that committee.
I intend to offer an amendment within this committee to make sure all of the recommendations are implemented. And second, will you remain an open mind looking at the bright line idea of all felonies as a way to professionalize our entire military justice system, so we don't have one system for some, but have two unequal and separate systems, but have one system where every service member can have access to justice?
Senator, that was an important topic when I served on the House Armed Services Committee, the military justice system and the injustice that sometimes happened through it, and how, as you've stated, the people of color seem to get harsher punishment. And if confirmed, that will continue to be a priority of mine, and I will do what I can to support the Secretary as well as the President in their initiatives to change that.
Senator, I also share the Secretary of Defense's view that there is absolutely no room for racial bias in our military service, and I absolutely will remain an open mind in addressing all these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for witnesses. And for the record, I'm going to submit a question for Mr. Connor about a dredging issue in New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Let me recognize Senator Kramer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of the witnesses. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Del Toro. Thank you for the generosity of your time last week. I enjoyed our conversation very much, and I always appreciate being ahead of Senator Sullivan so I can be the first senator to use the word Arctic, albeit a little different context. But obviously the Arctic is getting a lot more attention, as you and I spoke, and getting more attention from the Russian military, getting more attention from the China military. Obviously, it's becoming an important domain. And strategic, has great strategic value. And with that in mind, obviously good intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance work is becoming more important. And as that region gets busier, and I know one of the options that the Navy is looking at to fill its requirements is the MQ-4C Triton, as you and I talked about. And the Triton is a similar variant to the Global Hawks that we fly out of the Grand Forks Air Force Base. And in North Dakota. In fact, between our existing expertise, communications architecture, contractor presence, runway, and base infrastructure, the ground-based detect and avoid radar, and our proximity to the Arctic. Yes, Grand Forks is close to the Arctic. I think Grand Forks would be a really smart choice for operating something like the Triton on an Arctic ISR mission. When confirmed, can you commit to fresh thinking when it comes to new and evolving missions and looking at all of the best options for where to execute Navy missions, and not just the traditional options or only Navy bases?
Senator, first let me thank you for your commitment to the Arctic. The Arctic isn't just an issue of national security, it's an issue of economic security to our nation. It's incredibly important the Navy Marine Corps team remain fully engaged in the Arctic. I am also a supporter of commitment to our nuclear triad in every possible way. As you know, The Navy plays a very key, important role in maintaining the nuclear triad. And as you know, Columbia is our #1 procurement priority in the United States Navy. And if confirmed, I commit to you that I will remain committed to both the Arctic and our nuclear triad.
At a conference last week, Mr. Del Toro, Rear Admiral Mike Studeman, the top intelligence officer in the Indo-PACOM, said that naval intelligence officials sum up the current situation with China in 2 words used by Douglas MacArthur in discussing the failure to head off World War II, and those 2 words are too late. Admiral Studeman said that it's too late in comprehending the deadly purpose of a potential enemy, too late in realizing the mortal danger, too late in preparedness, too late in uniting all possible forces for resistance. Do you agree with Admiral Studeman's assessment that we're too late in confronting China, as he mentioned, and what would you do as Secretary of the Navy to address this assessment?
Well, Senator, as I stated in my initial opening statement, China is our #1 pacing threat and our greatest threat, not just to our national security, but to our economic security as well. I tend to be an optimist. I do not believe that we're too late. I think what we need to do now and moving forward is make the right investments so that we can deter China in every possible way, part of the Navy Marine Corps team working with our joint forces in the Indo-Pacific theater and across the world. So I tend to be an optimist, Senator. I think there's many opportunities that lie ahead, and if confirmed as Secretary of the Navy, I hope to dive in maybe head first or perhaps feet first, not quite sure yet, but I hope to dive in quickly to resolve some of these issues that we're facing.
Well, whether head first or feet first, you'll be up to your, head for sure.
Yes, sir.
But thank you for that. I was going to ask about new technologies and rigorous engineering, but the chairman handled that one very well. Thank you for your answer. Ms. Miller, I know that the deputy comptroller job doesn't directly include the responsibilities of acquisition reforms. However, with your future responsibilities over budget, obviously in fiscal matters, your past responsibilities over planning and execution of all those things, I want to ask for some help in thinking about how to fix a problem that I see, and that is the problem of protests and lawsuits. Some of the protests and lawsuits can delay or even cancel a very important program. And of course, we're, just recently, the most recent victim is the JEDI program, which has now been canceled. And in fact, I would submit to you that some of these protests and lawsuits do a more effective job of holding up our progress than our enemies could do if they were working that hard at it. So if it's a lawsuit that goes before a judge that doesn't either have an understanding or maybe a commitment to the same things that our military has a commitment to, it becomes even worse. I'm just wondering from a comptroller perspective, how does a program that gets delayed indefinitely or canceled affect military readiness? And do you have any thoughts, at least for today, that we can start thinking about and how we might be able to fix this?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. You raise a really important point about how do we continue to deliver cutting-edge technology quickly to our fighting forces, and how do we do so economically? And certainly, I am not a lawyer, so I tread hesitantly upon the ground of legal controversies with contracting. But I would say that at the present, we have to follow the rule of law in terms of contracts and contract disputes, and that there may be room inside of there for relooking that, given the kinds of delays that we have experienced moving forward. I also believe that there are a number of alternative contracting capabilities. OTAs in particular have been used incredibly effectively recently as we've moved forward through the COVID response. And I believe looking at other alternative contracting authorities that have already been granted by this body would be an important part of looking at how to streamline our contracting and acquisition processes going forward. So, sir, if confirmed, I'd be happy to dig into that a little bit more with my colleagues in acquisition and bring forward some additional ideas.
I appreciate all that. I do appreciate your optimism, and all those alternatives still get menaced by lawyers, of which you dodged that bullet, I understand. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. Senator Blumenthal, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of you for your service and for your willingness to continue that service to our country. I'm impressed with every one of you, and I look forward to supporting you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions of Mr. Del Toro and appreciate, first of all, your conversation with me yesterday and your commitment to our submarine program, which I know you regard as vital. I'd like to invite you to visit Electric Boat and the sub base in New London at your very earliest opportunity. I know you know a lot about the program, but I think you'll be deeply impressed by the ongoing efforts, very expert and efficient work by Electric Boat on both the Virginia class and the Columbia class submarines, and I welcome your commitment to continuing the construction pace or cadence at 2 Virginia class submarines a year and ongoing efforts on Columbia. I want to raise with you an issue that has really been, I think, ignored, and that is that the theft of weapons, lost or stolen weapons from our armories. The Marine Corps and the Navy are involved in it. On June 15th, 2021, the Associated Press reported that the United States military has had more than 1,900 weapons lost or stolen over the past decade. I don't expect you to be completely up to speed on this issue now or any of the other witnesses, but I'd like you to report back to me on how the Navy and Marine Corps tracks and accounts for sensitive conventional arms, ammunition, and explosives. You may be aware that recently a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps pleaded guilty pursuant to a plea arrangement to larceny of military property and other charges in connection with lost and stolen weapons and explosives. And I think that simply drove home the point about the urgency of this issue. Ms. Karlin, I welcome your answer to my colleague, Senator Shaheen, about both the special immigration visa program and also the plight of women and others in Afghanistan who will be left behind once we withdraw. And I know that the President has very good intentions, and we all have hopes about what will happen there, but hopes and good intentions are not a strategy. I don't know whether you're prepared now to provide more specifics about what we're going to do to protect those women and their rights, or others who will be left behind having relied on our past commitments. But I would welcome your more specific response now or in writing afterward.
Thank you, Senator. Our partners are incredibly important, both for what we have done in the past in Afghanistan and what the future of Afghanistan looks like. If I'm confirmed, I would hope to work very closely with my colleagues in Indo-Pacific Security Affairs in the Office of the Secretary of Defense to ensure that those partnerships remain meaningful.
Well, what I'd like is more specifics about what can be done to protect those folks. And I know that there's an evacuation plan for the interpreters and others who've worked with us. I'd like to know what more can be done for people who will remain in Afghanistan. And if you're not prepared to do it now, I'd like it, say, within a specific period of time after your confirmation. I know a week is probably short, but a couple of weeks. I think that we are looking for some kind of more specific commitment.
Senator, I would be more than willing to give you a longer answer separately. I would just say at this time, I think it'll be important to maintain meaningful relationships with our Afghan partners to ensure that we have robust indicators and warnings so that we have an understanding of how and in what ways the situation on the ground is changing, and to make sure that we're monitoring that closely, not just with colleagues inside Afghanistan, but also with other relevant allies and partners.
Ms. Cisneros, I'm essentially out of time, but I'd like you to respond in writing to the concerns about military suicide raised by the recent Brown University's Cost of War project, which I think is deeply alarming, indicating that the rate of suicide in the military is 2.5 times the rate in our general population. If you could respond in writing, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cotton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you on your nominations. Mr. Del Toro, thanks for taking the time to visit yesterday. I want to speak today about what we discussed yesterday, in particular the health of the surface Navy. After several incidents involving ships like the Fitzgerald, the McCain, the Bonhomme, the surrender of 2 patrol boats to the IRGC Navy, I became concerned that there might be some cultural problems in our surface Navy in particular. So I asked some distinguished former leaders of the sea services to conduct anonymous and large-scale interviews to review this. That report just came back to me, as well as Congressman Gallagher, Banks, and Crenshaw yesterday. We've released it publicly. And I found a lot of what was in there very concerning. And I think you probably would share some of my concerns. The most concerning thing, aside from the fact that 94% of all the sailors interviewed thought that the Navy has a crisis of leadership and culture on the surface, is that they said that they have seen little institutional focus in their training over the years in warfighting and lethality. They think that these are not isolated incidents, but cultural problems. I want to stress at the outset that this is not a partisan or political or ideological issue. It spans multiple administrations, multiple secretaries of the Navy, multiple CNOs. Probably goes back to 1991 and the loss of a pacing peer competitor in the Soviet Navy. Some of these are probably familiar to you, at least in their nascent form, from your final days in the service. I think they've gotten worse since then. I'm going to go through a few of them for you. And I want to stress again, these are not my words or the words of Congressman Gallagher, Banks, or Crenshaw. These are the words of our sailors. First concern, a number of officers think administrative tasks are overburdening commanders, and that the Navy promotes skills at office chores instead of operational excellence, and that this crushing bureaucratic load too often chases out good officers and NCOs. Once confirmed, can I get your commitment, Mr. Del Toro, to take a look at this challenge of administrative tasks becoming so burdensome that they squeeze out operational focuses?
Well, Senator, let me first thank you for your concern for our surface Navy. For as long as the Congress has decided to maintain and support our Navy, our sailors and our Marines have sailed on our ships and upon the seas in a very challenging and difficult environment, and I appreciate your commitment to that. I will confirm to actually look at all the administrative burdens that our surface Navy has to contend with and ensure that their primary focus is based on warfighting, training, and skills.
Thank you. A second concern is the so-called zero defects mentality, where sailors often call it the one mistake Navy, that one mistake could result in the end of an officer or NCO's career. They said this fosters resentment and attrition in the force. John Lehman, former Secretary of the Navy, one of your predecessors, has pointed out that some of the finest and most storied admirals of World War II, some of whom have ships and ship classes named after them now, probably couldn't have survived in this environment. It reminds me of what Lincoln is supposed to have said of Grant when people complained that Grant drank too much. Lincoln said, "Find out what whiskey he drinks and send a case to all my commanders." But that there's too big a fear of a single slip up ending a career. So can I get your commitment that you'll look at this so-called zero defects mentality as well, so that the commanders can focus on doing their job without a worry of constantly fearing the loss of their job?
Well, Senator, let me first attest that Josephus Daniels did away with drinking in our Navy. and I do not condone drinking on board Navy ships or anywhere else in our military services. But to this issue of zero defects, we have to empower our commanders to be able to exercise their authorities. There is no single most solemn responsibility for a commander of any unit, particularly a commanding officer of a ship at sea, than their responsibility to ship handle. And it's important not to have a zero defect mentality. You are correct. Apart from the individuals that you mentioned, I would argue that there are many other more contemporary naval leaders, distinguished leaders, who've suffered through issues in their own career. I myself, had many challenges throughout my career, and so it's important to not have a zero defect mentality when training our future leaders of the United States Navy.
Thank you. And I understand that some defects have to result in serious consequences, but as do the sailors who are cited in our report. But they were very clear that zero defects is hurting their leadership. A third issue is the suffocating micromanagement that they cited because of advances in information technology and communications technology. Admirals and commodores now can reach across hundreds of miles and look over the shoulder of ship commanders. That's not only stifling to dynamic leadership, but it also creates a real risk of those leaders failing in an actual fight because that communication is very likely to be severed. Can I get your commitment to look into this challenge of micromanagement and making sure you have the appropriate levels of command and control across the chain of command, but it's not stifling our ship commanders?
I will look into this issue of micromanagement. There are times for good leaders to micromanage, and there are times for good leaders not to micromanage. Unquestionably, for example, when a ship is in restricted maneuvering under very difficult challenges, the commanding officer of that ship, for example, has 20 years of experience in ship handling. That is a proper time to micromanage and to continue to train your junior officers for them to be able to accomplish their missions. I think that this issue of micromanagement obviously has been impacted in positive ways sometimes. Our systems have become far more integrated, our combat systems have become far more integrated, and there are advantages to that. But to your point as well, too, we have to be able to empower our unit commanders to be able to do their jobs and do their jobs effectively and then back them up.
Thank you. My time has expired. There's other findings in this report that I'll provide to you. Things unrelated topics like the instability and the shortchanging of surface warfare officer training or the corrosive influence of certain kinds of attention to media or social media, but I'll provide it to you. I'll provide some written questions for the record as well. I just want to say I think our surface Navy is in need of some help and they need to get their fighting edge back. That's the consistent theme I heard from officers, from NCOs, from sailors at all levels. As a former commander yourself, very rare thing in the history of our Navy for a Secretary of Navy to have commanded ships at sea. I think you're uniquely positioned to address this issue. You've got a lot of other priorities like shipbuilding, but as we've heard this morning, you got a lot of fingers in that pie as well. This is a place where your leadership could make the single biggest difference and make sure that our sailors and their leaders are ready to fight and win tonight against a peer competitor like China. And I'll do everything I can, as will this committee, to help you make those changes that the surface Navy needs. But first and foremost, it's a question of leadership, and we'll need your leadership on it.
Thank you, Senator. If confirmed, I commit to taking on those opportunities.
And maybe after you've been on the job for a couple months, if you can get back to me on all these things and we can talk about what you found while you've looked into it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Runo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by asking all of the nominees the following two initial questions, and I would like a verbal response from you on these questions. Since you became a legal adult, have any of you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
No.
Have any of you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No.
No.
A number of my concerns have been touched upon by other members of this committee, so I'll go over some of these very quickly. Dr. Karlin, both Senator Shaheen and Senator Blumenthal have expressed their concerns, which I share, about what will happen to Afghan women and girls after we leave. So I just want you to know that I share this concern, and my expectation is that you will be focused on what you can do to support the women and girls. In particular, a number of us sent a letter to the president asking him to quickly appoint an ambassador at large for global women's issues as a point person for the administration on these issues. So with regard to Afghan women and girls, and I would expect that you would be working with that person.
Thank you, Senator, for raising this important issue along with your colleagues. If confirmed, I would absolutely commit to the women, peace, and security work that we've seen is playing such an important role globally.
For Mr. Del Toro, you've been asked a number of questions about the importance of the modernization of the shipyards, and these are issues that Senator Shaheen and I always bring up at these hearings. I would like your commitment also to really focus on what we can do to reduce the significant cost overruns that we are experiencing with the new dry dock construction that's happening at Portsmouth, because the next dry dock on the agenda for the Navy is the one at Pearl Harbor. So I would like to reiterate my concern, along with that of my other senators, that you will be very focused on what we need to do to proceed with these matters.
Senator, I had the good fortune of building one of our Navy's newest destroyers and lived in a shipyard practically for a year and a half while she was being built, and having first-hand experience with dry docks and shipbuilding. And I want to applaud you and the other senators on this committee for your commitment to our shipyard capacity and building industry. It's incredibly important to our national security. It's incredibly important to our economic security for the nation as well, too. And I know that the Navy has a SIAP plan to invest in our shipyards, $20 billion over the next 20 years. I know that there's legislation before the Congress to try to include additional monies for the shipbuilding industry as part of the infrastructure plan. I applaud all those efforts, and I fully commit to you that if confirmed as Secretary of the Navy, that I will look into this particular issue with regards to cost overruns and do everything that I possibly can to correct the situation and put it back on track.
I think timing of the building of the dry dock in Hawaii is very critical, and we can't afford to have huge cost overruns and delays. I appreciate your reiteration of paying attention to these areas. For you, again, Mr. Del Toro, the Indo-Pacific Area of Operations, just huge AOR, includes many island nations such as Palau, Micronesia, Samoa, Marshall Islands, etc. Do you agree that our continued collaboration with these countries plays a vital role to our national security?
It absolutely plays a vital role to our national security and becomes increasingly more important as we face the growing threat of China in the Indo-Pacific. Logistics becomes incredibly important. We have to advance our platforms and our troops as much as possible. Collaborating with all these countries and islands is incredibly important. And I look forward to, if confirmed, to be able to strengthen our maritime diplomatic strategy in the Indo-Pacific and work with all these communities.
I will be very interested in what you will do to strengthen these relationships with these island nations, because I think we have an ongoing commitment to these island nations. We could do more to help them with their economy, just to strengthen their positions in the Indo-Pacific area, especially with China's whole-of-government approach to these island nations. Again, for you, Mr. Del Toro, it's concerning to me that over a year has passed since the investigation into the fire on the USS Bonhomme occurred. And this was a 4-day fire, and it destroyed a $4 billion amphibious warship at a time when we can ill afford to lose any of our ships. So I would ask that you focus on what is taking so long in this investigation. It's been over a year. That's somewhat unusual in these circumstances, and I would like to hear from you as to, of course, after you are confirmed, as to what is happening with this investigation.
Senator, if confirmed, I commit to looking into the issues with regards to the timing of these investigations and, more importantly, looking into the substance of what occurred.
Also, I note that there is a huge range of numbers in terms of the number of ships that we will eventually have. And I note that there is, in the 2018 NDAA, we're talking about a 355-ship Navy. And then I've seen ranges going from 398 ships to 512 ships. How can we even proceed with these kinds of numbers being tossed out? So I would be very interested in talking with you further, once confirmed, of course, as to whether we can get more accurate numbers about our shipbuilding schedule. Just one more thing for Mr. Connors. The Army Corps of Engineers has a huge role in Hawaii, particularly with regard to the upcoming the renewal of the leases for training ranges in the state. And without these training ranges, it will be very difficult for the military, particularly the Army and the Marine Corps, to stay in Hawaii as far as I'm concerned. So I would invite you to come to Hawaii and to be able to recognize how important it is as we go forward with these renewal of leases, that the community is very much kept abreast of what we plan to do. So I would welcome your coming to Hawaii for that purpose. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rono. Let me recognize Senator Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Tillis. First off, congratulations to each of you on your nominations, and I wish you the best of luck, and thanks for your willingness to serve. So my questions are for Mr. Del Toro. First, do you agree that we're seeing increasing pressures sort of from our adversaries around the world, especially China? Yeah. And do you agree that it seems like our adversaries are getting bolder if you look at whether it's Communist China threatening Taiwan, or whether it's Iran getting closer to the Venezuelan dictator Maduro, or Putin trying to control the Black Sea, the Arctic, and the Eastern Mediterranean? So do you think, are those examples where we're seeing that our adversaries are getting bolder day after day?
I do, Senator.
Do you think it's important for America and our allies that we have a stronger and a bigger Navy?
I believe that it's important for us to have the right mix of ships, capabilities, and lethality that's necessary to address this increasing threat that we're seeing to our national security and our economic security.
So if you look at the president's budget, he doesn't really intend to focus on adding more ships. It's more on research and development rather than procurement. So if you look at that budget, can you say that when you look at what we talked about, the threats and the bold action by our adversaries, that we actually are looking at a budget that makes some sense and where we are and the issues we're dealing with worldwide?
Senator, I wasn't here when that budget was being put together, nor did I have detailed knowledge of the analysis that went into putting that budget. I do know that our nation and our Department of the Navy felt was presented with threats with regards to increased op tempo, for example. We had threats to the readiness of the fleet, for example, that had to be addressed. At the same time, I always do believe that it's incredibly important to make the right investments in modernization. We can't be fighting the wars of yesterday. We have to fight the new wars of tomorrow that include cybersecurity and space and many other challenges that are presented. So if confirmed, I look forward to jumping into the fiscal year 23 budget and being able to address all these significant challenges in a serious way.
Thank you. Have you participated in any of the game scenario in the Pacific where it appears that when people are doing those now, that we will not be able to, America and our allies will not be able to defend Taiwan if it's invaded by Communist China?
Senator, I haven't recently, but I am a graduate of the Naval War College, and I participated in wargaming when I was at the Naval Academy as part of the advanced research program at the War College. I have not had access to the necessary classified plans and war games today, but I very much look forward, once confirmed, if confirmed, excuse me, to ensure that I dive into that immediately so I can better understand the threat and what we need to do to match that threat.
So do you have any feel, based on the budget that's been proposed by the president, that America is in a position with our allies to be able to defend Taiwan if, God forbid, Communist China attacks?
Senator, it's incredibly important to defend Taiwan in every way possible, and it takes a holistic view of our national commitment to Taiwan. We should be focused on providing Taiwan with as much self-defensive measures as humanly possible. And if confirmed in the Navy, I'm going to be exclusively focused on the China threat and exclusively focused on moving our maritime strategy forward in order to protect Taiwan and all of our national security interests in the Indo-Pacific theater.
Do you think we should be clear that there's no if, ands, or buts about it? We will defend Taiwan if attacked by Communist China?
Senator, we should be clear about our foreign affairs intentions and our support of Taiwan in every possible way.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Now let me recognize via WebEx Senator Peters, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the recognition. I also want to thank Senator Kane for allowing me to take his slot. Thank you very much, Senator Kane. First off, to our nominees, congratulations on your nomination and your willingness to serve. These are all incredibly important jobs and are all jobs that are going to take all of your skills and talent in order to perform. So thank you for your willingness to do that. My first question is for Mr. Cisneros. The Fairness for Veterans Act was included in fiscal year 2017 NDAA. And what this act did is it helped veterans who may have received a bad paper discharge because of behaviors that they exhibited. But it turns out those behaviors were the result of PTSD or traumatic brain injury that basically went undiagnosed. Folks who performed admirably in combat situations, but when they came home, had the kinds of behaviors that you would expect from someone who's suffering from these injuries. So the Fairness for Veterans Act allows folks to go to a board, and if they have credible evidence to show that they are indeed suffering from PTSD, which led to behaviors that led to a bad paper discharge, they can have that status changed and most importantly, can get the treatment that they have earned and that they deserve from the Veterans Administration in VA hospitals. The department has had some success with this program since it went into place, but it's clear there's more work to be done. Approximately 1,500 warfighters have had their status changed as a result of this process. It's been estimated by some veterans groups that up to 40,000 may be in that situation. But unfortunately, we've seen a very uneven application of the criteria that was put forth in the legislation. We've seen reductions in board staff, and we've seen the absence of deadlines. And all of those, according to veterans, legal defense groups, and other veterans organizations, has led to a success rate that is simply unacceptable. So my question to you, Mr. Cisneros, will you commit, if confirmed, to working with me to ensure that these review boards are resourced appropriately and the men and women who will have a right to go before these boards to have their cases adjudicated?
Senator, thank you for that question. PTSD is I have personal reasons why this is so important. My father, a Vietnam veteran, went over 30 years before he was finally diagnosed with PTSD, and this is something that we need to do a better job of in our military. And Senator, if confirmed, I commit to work with you to see how we can better improve this process to ensure that we are not only including this board, but also making changes to help those that are serving in uniform dealing with their mental health issues.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll look forward to working with you if confirmed. Mr. Connor, the Great Lakes are an extraordinary resource for the nation, but there are ones that are facing some both significant environmental and navigational challenges. The Corps is responsible for overseeing many projects that are absolutely vital to our region as well as the country. For example, the Sioux Locks are in need of major repairs and upgrading. They serve as a gateway to transport nearly 80 million tons of goods and raw material. We have the Brandon Road Lock and Dam Project, which is right now assisting us in combating invasive Asian carp. And the Corps is also going to oversee a new START project that we're hopeful will begin this year, which is the Great Lakes Resiliency Study. So my question to you, sir, if confirmed, what are your priorities for the Corps in the Great Lakes region?
Senator, my priorities are, just as you just stated, resiliency, whether it be with respect to projecting the impacts of future change on the Great Lakes or taking care of the existing infrastructure that's critical to commerce for the benefit of the states in the Great Lakes region. That's the challenge ahead. How do we maintain our existing infrastructure for the challenges now and the challenges we expect? How do we build new projects to carry out the functions that we need them to do today and continue in the future? And then the study overall to anticipate changes to the ecosystem and the environment around the Great Lakes. I understand all those factors are critical to your state and the other states in the region, and I look forward to working on those issues if I'm confirmed.
Great. Well, thank you. Mr. Del Toro, as we spoke earlier, cyber security is a major challenge faced by the Department of Defense and all of us all through society. And certainly cyber is now a warfighting domain, just like any other warfighting domain. Could you talk a little bit about how you believe that we should be educating our Navy and Marine Corps leaders, and not just those cybersecurity professionals, which clearly have to be highly trained, but how our Navy, Marine Corps leaders, all of them need to have training in cyber as a warfare domain?
Thank you, Senator. Cybersecurity presents a tremendous risk to our national security and our economic security. Without question, China and other countries have attacked us from a cybersecurity perspective. And this is a domain that we need to pay a lot of attention to and to train our most senior leaders in order to be combat effective against it. It's going to require skills training up and down the entire chain of command. It's going to require significant investments to protect our infrastructure as well, too. And if confirmed, I look forward to really digging in and taking a look at what capabilities we really currently have with regards to defensive and offensive measures as well, too, in order to curtail the tremendous threat that I think our nation faces, both militarily and economically as well, with regards to cyber.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and congratulations on your nomination. Mr. Cisneros, since 2004, Congress has enacted more than 240 provisions of law directly targeted at enhancing sexual assault prevention and response capabilities in the armed forces. Recent GAO report on military sexual assault and harassment states that of those 240 provisions, only about 9% address prevention. As the nominee for Undersecretary of Defense P&R, you're going to be overseeing the implementation of sexual assault and harassment reform in the military. How do you see your potential role overseeing this reform as the DoD is still not fully implemented all 240 enacted provisions? And also, how much more focus do you think we should place on the prevention component versus what we do after the act?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. I think prevention is very important in what we do. I know when I was serving in the U.S. Navy, I was the diversity and inclusion officer at a couple of my commands. I was responsible for conducting sexual harassment training, ensuring that it got done at my commands. And I think it's very important to ensure that that type of training is getting done. We need to focus on prevention. And if confirmed, that is definitely an area that I will make sure that we address.
I hope it's an area that we can do a better job of tracking progress and show some real sustainable results, positive results moving forward. It's been up and down, which actually leads to my next question. There's been a real shift here in the Senate, and I think also in the House, in removing the commanders from the prosecution decision of certain offenses. You're probably aware of a bill that's being discussed now, may be considered an amendment, may be considered on the upcoming NDA. I believe that prior reforms of the UCMJ that have been implemented, that in most cases we gave the department about 2 years to implement. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the scope of the proposal that's being spearheaded by Senator Gillibrand, actually very sensitive and supportive of a number of things that Senator Gillibrand wants to do. But what do you think about a 6-month implementation timeframe for something as sweeping as being proposed?
Senator, the Secretary has made it clear what direction he's taking the IRC recommendations and taking those to the White House. My understanding is the President has approved. If confirmed, I will support the Secretary in implementing these changes and doing so as timely as we can.
Yeah, I think that it would be very helpful just to get feedback when you're confirmed on some of the problems. I think that we could really win a battle and lose a war if we don't get the operational side of it down and dealing with the fact that the caseload is going to be there. I think the transition could be disruptive and actually create challenges. Mr. Del Toro, I've got to get parochial a little bit here. The Fleet Readiness Center, FRCEs, down in North Carolina at Cherry Point provides depot services for a lot of advanced aircraft today. If you go down there, it's like you're walking back to the 50s in terms of the facilities. They're out of date, so much so that Lockheed is thinking about implementing its own private depot level maintenance facility for the Joint Strike Fighter. I'm not going to get in. What I'm going to do is submit question for the record, similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago. We've got a lot of 5-year military construction projects that were supposed to come online as late as next year that haven't even been programmed. One that was programmed, I believe, in 2018 has not been built. So I would, if confirmed, I'd like to get your commitment to review some of these projects that are in the pipeline and explain to me why they're not programmed or why the upfit of that facility is for some reason still not on the priorities list for the Navy. Can I get your commitment to do that?
Absolutely, Senator. Depot maintenance is incredibly important, and we're spending only 1% of our top line in the Department of the Navy on infrastructure, and so it's incredibly important to pay close attention to these issues. And I look forward to working with you and your staff.
Well, thank you all, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to get to the other questions. We're going to have a vote here shortly, so I won't run over. We will be submitting some questions for the record. Thank you all, and once again, congratulations.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Let me recognize Senator Kane and thank you for his patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and what a distinguished panel. And I just want to weigh in on the nomination of Carlos Del Toro to be Secretary of the Navy. I was so pleased to have my senior senator, Mark Warner, here to do the introduction. Mr. Del Toro and his family have been close friends of mine for quite a long time, and I echo everything that Mark said about the professional qualifications, the patriotism, and most especially the character of this nominee. And I look forward to supporting you and as you continue your public service to the country. And to all of you, this is a uniquely qualified panel. Mr. Del Toro, I want to really focus my questions on you. As you know, the Navy is so important to Virginia. And I think Senator Cotton may have touched on this issue. After the collisions of the McCain and Fitzgerald in 2017, the Navy reinstated surface warfare officer training programs that in 2003 had been sort of moved to, I don't know exactly how I would describe it. They weren't so much the in-person training programs as they had been pre-2003, and it was more materials that were submitted to surface warfare officers so that they would become familiar with them. And the study of those tragic collisions, there was a decision made to sort of return back to a more robust surface warfare officer training. And so we've done that. But the surface warfare environment has changed so dramatically in the last 20 or 25 years. Commercial shipping has gone up about, I think, 250% globally since the mid-1990s. There's now GPS spoofing that can mess around with navigational accuracy on surface ships and others. The areas of congestion in sea lanes are not now limited to a couple of places in the world. Congestion is much more common all over the world. And so I guess I'd like to ask you, with the experience that you had as a surface warfare officer, including being the commander of a destroyer, what would your approach be to making sure that the surface warfare officer training component is every bit a match for the kinds of training that is, sub-officers or Navy aviators do? How would you approach that topic, which I know you're so familiar with it?
Thanks for raising this incredibly important issue, Senator. As I said earlier, sailors and Marines have been going down to the ships since the beginning of our Navy, and they are the backbone of our Navy in so many different ways. I was blessed perhaps by a quite robust training pipeline for our junior officers as they first entered the fleet. I do believe that the model that has been implemented again by the Navy post-2017 is the right model. It has the dedicated resources that are necessary to properly train our junior officers in the very basics of ship handling and rules of the road and proper operations of the equipments that are necessary to keep these platforms safe and to be able to effectively fight them as well too. So I'm actually quite inspired by the changes that have been made in our surface Navy over the course of the last 4 years since those two very tragic incidents. And let me simply add that I will, if confirmed, always carry the memories of, and the honor of the lives that were lost in those incidents with me as a constant reminder of our solemn responsibility to our Americans who served in the military.
Thank you, Mr. Del Toro. Mr. Cisneros, congratulations. I do have a question for you to follow up Senator Tillis. I completely agree with Senator Tillis that in the area of sexual assault, sexual harassment, that prevention is key. And I'll be self-critical. I think we spend more time here thinking about the important topic of investigation, analysis, prosecution, consequences, but we don't spend the time on prevention. I'm going to leave after this questioning to go to a help committee hearing where there's a President Biden nominee for a key position in the Department of Education. Similarly, in that committee, we spent a lot of time on Title IX procedures. What is the right way on a college campus or a K-12 campus that complaints of sexual assault or harassment should be investigated, and what should the standard be, and what rights should folks have, and what should the consequences be. We need to spend time on those things. But we spend so little time talking about prevention. And if you look at who are most likely to be victimized by sexual assault or harassment, it's more likely to happen when you're in the 18 to 24-year-old age range, whether you're in the military, on a campus, at a high school, in the workplace, out in society. This is a problem that anyone can experience, but the most acute time where you're at risk is in sort of 18 to 24, and many perpetrators are also in that same age range. So I would just say, as I conclude, my time is up, that I really agree with Senator Tillis that all of us, this side of the dais, your side of the dais, we need to spend more time on the prevention side of this and look at best practices that are out there and figure out how to replicate them. So I hope and have confidence that you will approach the topic in that way. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Senator Kane. Let me recognize Senator Blackburn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to each of you on your nominations, and thank you for your time today to answer our questions. Mr. Cisneros, I want to start with you, and let me just say I'm going to have questions for the record for each of you. I know I'm not going to get through all of this, but Mr. Cisneros, we talk a lot about readiness in this community, and of course, through the years, whether I was in the House or here working with Fort Campbell, and many of our families that are there, we've talked a lot more than just about personnel and training and equipment. We talk about families and family readiness. And I think that as we look more holistically at our military and as we look at dwell times and retention, then we need to look at the family readiness component. And I'd like to hear from you how you think we can better account for family readiness and what we can do with some of the programs that have been successful, like the Family Advocacy Program and the New Parent Support Program, which has been vital for many of our young men and women, the Exceptional Family Member Program. All of these are overseen by the Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness. So do you believe that when we're looking at these and trying to find ways to accounting for these, that we're receiving the right degree of feedback from these
participants in these programs?
Well, thank you, Senator, for that question, and thank you for your work on this topic and taking time also to speak with me when we did earlier, I believe a month or two ago.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a saying, right? You recruit the member, but you retain the family. And it's so important, right, that we need to focus on these family topics. You know, for example, when I was in the House of Representatives, I remember sitting in a hearing where spouses were there talking about the exceptional family members and how when you say like take a more holistic approach, but these members were like at joint bases and they couldn't go use the local facilities there because it wasn't their branch of service. They had to go to the closest, you know, if they were in the Navy, closest Navy base or the closest Army base, whatever branch of service they've been. And I believe we need to take a look at those issues and figure out with so many joint operations going on, how do we serve the members as a whole and not just the member of our...
Is this going to be a priority for you? Because we are sharing the same concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just need to make certain that this is a priority.
Yes, ma'am. If confirmed, taking care of our military families is definitely a priority, and I believe that's part of taking care of our people, which is one of my core, if confirmed, the core values that I will focus on, because, you know, our families, whether it be housing or whether it be the exceptional military child program, we need to ensure, like as I said, right, retain the family. And definitely
that is right. I need to move on. Ms. Miller, I can see that you want to weigh in on this. Can I ask you to submit to me in writing your thoughts on how we improve this? Dr. Karlin, I do want to come to you because I think China and our nuclear strategy is going to be increasingly important, and we're about to run out of time. But as we look at the NDS, if confirmed, you're the one that is going to need to begin authoring the next NDS. I want to hear from you how you would prioritize China in that, and then also China expanding their nuclear arsenal and how that affects us. And we're about out of time, but I'd love to hear your response to those two.
Thank you, Senator. I am profoundly concerned about this issue. And if confirmed, if I had the opportunity to lead the next national defense strategy, I can assure you that that would be a priority, ensuring the department understands how to approach this challenge and has the capabilities and the investments that are in place to ensure that we can prevail in it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. There is a vote ongoing, which I must attend. I will now recognize via WebEx Senator Warren, then I will recognize Senator Hawley, and also after Senator Hawley, Senator Tuberville. And by that time, I will be back to be able to recognize other members who may be on WebEx. Senator Warren, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all our witnesses for being here. Congratulations on your nominations. Mr. Connor, I am very pleased to hear from a nominee with your deep experience and understanding of Native American policy and natural resources issues. I am, however, very concerned about the Dakota Access Pipeline and what it reflects about the Army Corps of Engineers' relationship with tribal nations. Several tribal nations with homelands along the Missouri River have sued the Corps over the Dakota Access Pipeline. I joined with a number of my colleagues to support the tribe's cause. A federal district court found that the Corps violated federal law when it failed to prepare an environmental impact statement before granting approval for the pipeline to run under Lake Oahe. I am concerned that the pipeline continues to operate without a completed environmental review, despite the legal requirements. So, Mr. Connor, will you commit to making sure that the Corps follows the law and that this situation with the Dakota Access Pipeline is addressed as quickly as possible?
Senator, thank you. Absolutely. The Corps will be following the law with respect to the directions of the court and all other applicable laws and policy with respect to completing the work on the Dakota Access Pipeline, and that includes addressing the issues identified by the court, and robust tribal consultation. And I think that's the next step. Tribal consultation is not a check-the-box exercise. It's got to be robust, meaningful, and that means it's got to be substantive in the interaction with tribes. So I look forward to working on this issue if I'm confirmed. I understand there's a solid schedule that's been put together to finish the work on the environmental impact statement, and it's my intent to oversee that, not obviously interfere with that. The Corps is doing good work with very substantive direction now from the court, and we will be overseeing that and ensuring that the laws are followed.
Well, I very much appreciate hearing you say that you're going to make sure that the laws are followed. You know, I think you have your work cut out for you here. The district court has noted, I think with some exasperation, that the Corps has dragged its feet on making a decision about whether to use its enforcement powers to halt operation of the pipeline, even though the pipeline is, in the court's words, quote, an unlawful encroachment. So let me just ask, Mr. Connor, will you commit to promptly exploring the appropriate use of the Corps' enforcement powers in this case?
Yes, Senator, I will promptly look into that issue if I'm confirmed.
Good. Well, I want you to look into it, and I want you to enforce the law here. This is about the federal government's fulfillment of its trust and treaty obligations to tribal nations and about the Corps' adherence to federal law. So I hope you agree that this deserves your urgent attention. I've heard a lot of complaints from tribal representatives that over the years, the Department of Defense has not done enough to consult tribal nations or to respect the federal government's nation-to-nation relationship with them. So let me ask the question another way, Mr. Connor. Will you commit to ensuring that the Corps respects tribal nations and the federal government's obligations to our tribal nations?
Senator, that will be one of my highest priorities. I have spent a long time in government. I've spent a long time working on Native American issues on behalf of tribes and trying to improve the relationship of the federal government as a whole with tribal nations. You have my strong commitment that I understand the concerns. I've heard them many, many times over the years. I understand them, and I want to act on them and improve that relationship, improve the federal trust responsibility, improve the way we do consultation. It will be one of my highest priorities if I'm confirmed.
Strong commitment, highest priorities. That's what I like hearing. Thank you, Mr. Connor. I'm looking forward to working with you to ensure that we're treating tribal nations with the respect to which they are entitled both legally and morally. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think now we go to the next person.
Thanks to all of the nominees for being here. It's good to see you, Mr. Del Toro. I want to start with you. I want to start with China. I've become a broken record in this committee on this subject, but I have been asking just about everybody who's up in front of us, including the Secretary of Defense, Deputy Secretary Hicks, about the fait accompli scenario involving Taiwan with China. I ask about this because China and PACOM is our pacing theater, and the fait accompli scenario in Taiwan is our pacing threat. So let me just ask you what I've asked them, whether or not it is vital that the United States maintain the ability to defeat an attempted Chinese fait accompli takeover invasion of Taiwan. Secretary Austin, Deputy Secretary Hicks, virtually everybody else I've asked this question to has said, yes, it is vital, but I'd like to get your view on this. Do you think it's vital that we maintain the ability to deter and, if necessary, defeat a fait accompli, Chinese fait accompli against Taiwan?
Absolutely so, Senator.
Very good. And given that, do you think that the Navy ought to prioritize this scenario as it develops operational concepts?
Absolutely so, Senator.
Great. That's great. I like those answers. Dr. Karlin, I enjoyed speaking with you. I think it's been a couple of months ago now, but I enjoyed our conversation. You said when we spoke that this fait accompli scenario against Taiwan, and I'm quoting you now, has absolutely got to be one of the key scenarios used to shape the 2022 NDS development. And he went on to say it should be a higher priority than scenarios involving North Korea, Russia, or other possible contingencies with China. I agree with that 100%. Do you stand by that, I assume? I assume you haven't changed your view in the last couple of months.
Senator, I absolutely do stand by that, and I also want to thank you for your leadership on this really important issue.
Well, that's kind of you to say. Earlier this year, Secretary Austin told me that, I'm quoting him now, combat credible forward deterrent posture is instrumental to the U.S. military's ability to deter and, if necessary, deny, emphasis deny, a fait accompli scenario. Do you agree with this emphasis on denial, a strategy of denial in PACOM and as it relates to China specifically?
Senator, I want to ensure that China doesn't think that it should take any of these actions today, doesn't try to take them in the future, and if it does, we have a military that can prevent it from happening successfully.
Good, very good. The force plan is still with you, Dr. Karlin, if I could. The force planning construct in the 2018 NDS shifted focus in a pretty significant way from maintaining our, and you and I talked about this a couple of months ago, from maintaining our ability to fight and win two simultaneous regional conflicts to fighting and winning a single war against a near peer or peer competitor, a great power conflict, while deterring opportunistic aggression simultaneously. So pretty big difference there. Do you agree with that force planning construct that the 2018 NDS adopted?
Senator, I haven't dug into the classified information behind this. If I'm confirmed, that would absolutely be a priority. Nevertheless, I do absolutely believe, as the Secretary has said, China needs to be the pacing threat.
Let me just ask you about the two-war construct that governed much of our strategic thinking for a long period of time that the 2018 NDS departed from, again, pretty significantly. Is it your sense that we should return to a two-war force construct and that ought to govern our thinking, our strategic planning, operational planning going forward? Or do you think that the trajectory that the 2018 NDS set us on is broadly correct?
I think, Senator, the U.S. military going forward needs to be prepared across the spectrum of conflict. However, looking at the future security environment and the challenges that we see from strategic competition, it particularly needs to prioritize the challenges that we see from China.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I just want to register on the record my own concern about returning to a two-war construct. I think given the unique challenges that we have with great power competition, you've mentioned now China multiple times, which is excellent. I think that the earlier construct that governed our thinking from the 90s forward is outmoded, outdated. It's certainly something that I would oppose if there was a move to return to that. So I look forward to working with you on this if you're confirmed. Mr. Del Toro, let me come back to you. Still on the subject of China, it has the largest Navy now in the world, and it continues to outpace many of our own modernization efforts, which obviously is a big concern. Let me ask you about our current funding levels. At these levels, is it your view that our Navy can both maintain readiness and pursue the modernization that we need to do in order to outpace the growing Chinese threat?
So first, let me say, Senator, that I do believe that China may have more numbers of platforms, but we are a more powerful and capable and experienced Navy than any other Navy on the globe. Having said that, though, we have to remain conscious of the fact that that naval superiority may not always be there either, and we have to make the necessary investments in the fiscal year 23 budget to ensure that we abide by the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act, as I said before, that's committed to a 355-ship Navy, and make those investments not just in numbers of platforms, but capability and lethality. As you well know, Senator, we have to invest in missile technology, hypersonics, computing power, all the cybersecurity, all those other technologies that are going to advance our ability to deter China in the Indo-Pacific.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I have to say I've got real concern about this year's budget, about these funding levels in terms of our ability to both maintain our readiness, which is itself a significant challenge, and pursue the modernization that we're going to need. So I look forward, if you're confirmed, to working with you on this. I need to yield to Senator Tuberville. I have a few more questions for Dr. Karlin and Mr. Del Toro. Both, I'll give those to you for the record. Thanks again to all the nominees.
Let me thank Senator Hawley and recognize Senator Tuberville.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Y'all look hungry, so I'll be quick. Dr. Karlin, if confirmed, you will be responsible for Missile Defense Review, a subtask of the Global Force Posture Review. China has rapidly expanded their long-range strike capabilities for 2 years in a row. The Indo-PACOM commander's number one unfunded priority has been a missile defense system for Guam. Do you believe that in order for our military to properly pivot Indo-Pacific, that we need a defense system on Guam to defend against advanced Chinese cruise ballistic missiles?
Senator, Guam is a key operating location for the U.S. Department of Defense, and we need to ensure that it is appropriately protected. While I haven't dug into the classified details behind this issue, if I am confirmed, I can promise you it would be a priority of mine.
Thank you. Do you believe the missile defense architecture to defend Guam should include a variety of capabilities, including the 360-degree sensor coverage and a wide range of tools to defeat ballistic cruise and hypersonic missiles?
Senator, while I can't speak to specific platforms since I'm not privy to the classified information, I do think the need for such a capability, ensuring Guam is appropriately protected, is absolutely important.
With these two Indo-PACOM commanders wanting the Aegis Ashore system to defend Guam, do you agree with their assessment?
I haven't read the classified information behind this one either, sir. That said, I think we need analytically rigorous and operationally effective capabilities to ensure that our military can do what it needs in this key region.
You got a lot of reading to do.
Indeed, sir.
Mr. Cisneros, 300 million young men and women, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, capabilities of being in our military to defend this great country. We were recently told only 450,000 of those 30 million were capable and qualified to be in our military. How are we going to overcome that?
Well, Senator, there's a lot of issues that kind of go in with that. And one of the issues that we don't really have a lot of it's physical fitness. A lot of these young men and women don't meet the standards. It's important that we maintain these high standards. We want the best and the brightest to be able to recruit the best and the brightest. I know you know a little bit about recruiting, and if confirmed, definitely recruiting and retention, because I believe you can't talk about recruiting without also talking about retention, because we want to recruit the best and the brightest, but we also want to make sure that we maintain their skills and the knowledge that we give them. And so I am committed, if confirmed, to do what we can to help our services in their recruiting efforts to make sure that we can do the best that we can to get the best and the brightest.
We cannot drop our qualifications, though. I keep hearing our commanders and people that come in front of this committee say that, we're changing some standards that they have to go through. Instead of running 2 miles, they just have to walk 1 mile. I can't believe that the United States of America would drop its qualifications, especially for what's so important, our military. And so in our education system, only half the kids in this country can read over the 6th grade reading level. That's embarrassing. And we'd hate to send them to the military to have to learn to read after coming out of high school. So we got a lot of work to do.
Senator, I agree. I believe it's important for us to maintain our high standards in the military, and confirmed, I will work with our different services to ensure that we do that.
Mr. Del Toro, thank you for your service. I think you're going to be great in this position. As former Aegis Destroyer Commander, you've got the qualifications. We all know that China is a huge threat. Who's going to be our most important allies around China for us to fall upon?
Senator, that's a marvelous question, and there are going to be many allies. We have many allies and partners right now in the Indo-Pacific theater, and we need to continue to strengthen those alliances and those partnerships more so as we advance our troops and our logistics into the Indo-Pacific theater. It's important to respect each and every one of them and respect their concerns as well, too, and to work very collaboratively with them, diplomatically, economically, and militarily as well, so that we can present a really combined deterrence to China and how China wants to accomplish its economic goals around the globe.
Yeah, as we've talked, our allies are one of our biggest asset.
Absolutely.
Other than the men and women that fight in our military, and we need to continue to build, especially for China. They don't have a lot of friends. We do, and we need to count on those friends. So we hope that you would build on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tuberville. Let me recognize via WebEx Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. According to numerous studies, paid family leave offers clear advantages to both employers and families. For employers, it increases employee morale, productivity, and retention of key talent. For employees, it provides economic security, has a positive effect on infant and maternal health, and reduces infant mortality rates. Yet, depending on their branch of service and family situation, many service members currently only receive 2 or 3 weeks of parental leave. Now, that is actually an improvement, because when I had my baby, my husband, who was on active duty, only got 10 days. So 2 to 3 weeks is better than that, but it's still not good enough. Service members in dual military relationships have to decide who is the, quote, primary caregiver and who is the, quote, secondary caregiver. It's an artificial distinction that devalues the role of one parent compared to the other in the early days of an infant's life. And currently, service members who accept a long-term foster placement don't receive any guaranteed paid parental leave, despite the obvious need to spend time bonding with a foster child and helping them adjust to their new home for the first few weeks after they arrive. That's why I introduced a Service Member Parental Leave Equity Act, which would ensure that all caregivers in the military can access 12 weeks of paid parental leave, whether they are a birth parent or not. Paid family leave is critical for the physical, mental, and psychological health of military families who are welcoming new family members. The children of service members already face frequent moves, and parents who work long hours have rigorous training requirements away from home and can be deployed for months or years on end, often to dangerous locations. Mrs. Cisneros, as a veteran yourself, I know you've seen firsthand the pressures that military families face. Do you agree that we can do more to promote the development, long-term emotional health, and stability of military children?
Senator, thank you for thank you for your service, and thank you for this question and really your dedication to supporting our military families. I do believe we can do more to support our military families, and if confirmed, I am looking forward to working with yourself as well as this committee to see how we can further support our military families who sacrifice so much and give up so much in order to support their service member, their spouse who is serving our country, and as well as, our military families are serving our country as well.
Thank you. We can't change all the operational requirements that take military parents away from their children, but we can extend parental leave benefits to give all parents, not just the ones who give birth to the child, adequate time to bond with and care for their children at the beginning of their parent-child relationship. Research from many sources has consistently shown that this early bonding time can lead to better developmental outcomes for children in the long term, as well as improved parent-child relationships that can last for years. It's a foundation that's especially important for a service member who may have to be away from home later in their child's life. As you said, if confirmed, I look forward to working with you, Mr. Cisneros, to prioritize policies that improve the health and resilience of military families. Now, helping military children should be motivation enough to increase parental leave, but this policy will also, I believe, bolster military recruitment. Mr. Cisneros, in your written testimony, you stated recruitment and retention of top military personnel is of great importance to both this committee and the DoD. In order to recruit and to retain the best and brightest, DoD must modernize its parental leave policy to be more competitive with the private sector and to remove some of the pressures that force dedicated service members to choose between serving their country or doing right by their family. Will you commit to exploring opportunities such as the ideas contained in the Service Member Parental Equity Leave Act to expand the current parental leave policy to ensure that we are recruiting and retaining talent?
Senator, thank you for that, and again, thank you for all your work on this subject. I will commit that I am open to looking at options about how we can better take care of our service members and their families, and looking at all options that will help with recruiting and retention, and definitely, giving families time off during the birth of a child is something that definitely needs to be looked at, and definitely trying to create a uniform policy throughout the military for all branches is something that, amongst other subjects and all different topics, that I think is important that we have. And again, if confirmed, I am committed to working with you to see how we can develop options that will better take care of our families.
Thank you. Well, it needs to cover more than just the birth of a child, but also adoptions and fostering as well. Thank you, and I look forward to working to better the lives of our service members in the future. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth. Now let me recognize Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses here. Congratulations on your nomination. Mr. Del Toro, I appreciate our opportunity to have a good discussion yesterday. Same with you, Mr. Connor, so thank you for your time on that. These issues of culture in the Navy, I know Senator Cotton raised a couple issues, but I think it would be good here if you could just clarify, your intent to focus on the Navy's core mission, which is to win and fight our country's wars if called upon to do so. Isn't that the main mission of the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps?
Senator, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the main mission of the Navy Marine Corps team is to fight our wars and maintain our peace and be as committed to that as humanly possible. And let me thank you for your commitment to our nation's national security as well, too. And also recognize your commitment as a White House fellow as well, too, and how you've actually taken the lessons that you learned early on in your career as White House fellow and applied them to these important issues of national security to our nation.
Thank you. Well, I think just keeping that core mission, readiness, lethality, and if called upon to go win, people don't like to say it, kill people, right? Destroy our enemies. That's what we need to do. Everything else is collateral. We got to keep that focus. So I appreciate you maintaining that focus. I want to talk about the Arctic for a number of reasons. Our Pentagon, this has been both parties, has kind of been delinquent on recognizing the strategic importance, national security, economic security, the people who I happen to represent in Alaska. America is an Arctic nation because of my state, and the Pentagon has been slow to recognize this, slow to recognize the challenges, slow to recognize the national security, economic security dimension. This committee and the Congress have been pushing the Pentagon leadership to wake up to this big, important area of national security and great power competition. So, Mr. Del Toro, in January 2021, the Department of Navy, the Navy published its Arctic strategy. The Air Force had done this recently. The Army had done this recently. The Secretary of Defense, Secretary Austin, and Deputy Secretary Hicks committed to me in their confirmation hearings to fully resource the Arctic strategies of the different services, including the navies. So, if confirmed, can I get your commitment to follow through with the pledges made by the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary to fully resource the Navy's Arctic strategy, and for you within 45 days, you and the CNO to come brief me on the implementation of that strategy? This is very important. Tomorrow, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army are coming in to brief me on the implementation of the Army's Arctic strategy. It was a commitment the Secretary of the Army made to me during her confirmation hearing. So I'd like to get that confirmation from you as well.
Senator, let me assure you that the Arctic strategy is incredibly important to our national security. As you well know, the Navy has operated in the Arctic for many, many years. Our submarine forces, our Marine Corps forces who operate in the Arctic, it's incredibly important to our economic security. And I pledge to you that within 45 days, if confirmed, I will come back to you with the Navy's commitment to the Arctic as well, too, moving forward.
Great. Well, part of that, and I appreciate that, part of that plan is the Navy talks about it will maintain an enhanced presence, strengthen cooperative partnerships, adopt our naval forces for a blue Arctic, do freedom of navigation operations, not undersea ones. I appreciate the submarine fleet, but FONOPs. And yet, I'd like you to be able to brief me on how the Navy can achieve these objectives without any icebreakers. We have two, one is broken for our nation, without any Arctic deep water ports, and without any ice-hardened surface ships. So right now the Navy talks a big game, but literally has no ability to execute its Arctic strategy. So I'd like to be able to make sure you brief me on that within the next 45 days. Mr. Connor, you made a commitment to me yesterday. I appreciated it on the Arctic Deepwater Port to continue the good progress that we've made between the Corps and the city of Nome and the state of Alaska. Can I get your commitment, as we talked about yesterday, to continue that? That's an important element of our overall Arctic strategy, to have infrastructure that can actually handle a Navy destroyer or an icebreaker. Right now, there is literally no port between Anchorage and the Bering Strait that can do that. That's about a 1,400 nautical mile span of American territory. So we need to change that. Can I get your commitment to continue the progress the Corps and the state of Alaska have made on that?
Senator, yes, you have my commitment to keep working on that issue in the Deepwater Port at Nome. I understand the expanse of Alaska, having been up there a number of times. Chief's report, authorization, works proceeding. I'll continue to work with you on that.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, unless there's other witnesses.
There are.
Oh, there are. Okay, I will submit additional questions for the record. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan, for your graciousness. I appreciate it very much.
Of course.
Let me now recognize via WebEx Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, and of course, Ranking Member Inhofe for holding this hearing. And we've got lots to work on today, but I'd really like to thank Mr. Del Toro for speaking with me yesterday, and I want to thank all the nominees for your willingness to serve. But Mr. Del Toro, I really want to speak specifically today about Fallon Naval Air Station. Nevada is proud to host Fallon Naval Air Station. It is home to Top Gun and our nation's premier carrier air wing and a SEAL training center. And so last year, the Navy requested an expansion of over 600,000 acres of federal land and over 65,000 acres of non-federal land, which would expand the Fallon Training Complex to 900,000 acres. Federal land managers currently allow the public to access much of the proposed expansion area for grazing, for hunting, for mineral exploration, and geothermal development. And the Navy's proposal would curtail many of those activities in addition to restricting tribal access to its really important cultural sites. So in FY21 NDAA, we included a provision, Senator Mastro and I put in, and that we offered it mandates the creation of an intergovernmental executive committee, or IEC, to allow local, state, and tribal governments this public forum to collaborate, to communicate with the Navy, and to give advice to what we need to do, exchange all of that information. It's really important to make sure that if we do expand, that it is done so in agreement with others. And of course, we do have to worry about modernization requirements, and we have to keep up with emerging threats and technologies. But I have to think about Nevada's natural resources and our cultural resources. Recently, though, however, the Navy sent over a legislative proposal to this committee, which unfortunately, after having some of these meetings, was identical to the request from last year. It doesn't incorporate any of the suggested changes that came out from the local stakeholders or the Nevada delegation. So, Mr. Del Toro, as the Navy pursues modernization of the range, can you commit, if confirmed, to exchanging the information, collaborating with our local, state, and tribal government, all of the relevant stakeholders, and be sure that you will begin to incorporate these as you try to submit any request to this committee?
Senator, I want to make sure I'm looking at you. I think the cameras are there. Good. First of all, let me thank you, Senator, for your commitment to national security. Fallon, Nevada, the base there is incredibly important to our national security, for our naval aviators, for our SEAL teams. And your commitment has been very long, and we're very grateful to it. It's incredibly important to expand that Naval Air Station, as you know, and the range in order to accomplish our national security mission. In doing so, it's also equally important to respect the tribes that have sacred lands there. And I commit to doing all the things that you said, working with the committee that was established. And I also look forward to meeting with those tribal leaders as well, too. I'm not sure if they've actually ever met with the Secretary of the Navy, but I commit to you that I will meet with them and have these critical discussions. I think that there are also interagency discussions that need to be had with the Department of Interior to try to correct the problem that you mentioned. And I look forward to working with you and your staff on all these issues to make them right.
Thank you. And so I'm hoping that if confirmed, you'll submit a revised legislative proposal that would incorporate the stakeholder input. But briefly, in just the minute I have left, in 1959, the Navy dropped live an inert ordnance outside of Fallon's B-19 range. We talked about this, and approximately 6,000 acres of land was contaminated of the Walker River Paiutes Tribe Reservation. So if confirmed, again, will you commit to working with me and the Nevada delegation to ensure that the Walker Paiute Tribe is fairly compensated.
Senator, I've confirmed I fully commit to working with you and your staff on this incredibly important issue as well.
Thank you. I need to go vote, so I'm going to yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rosen, and to the nominees, thank you for your testimony this morning. Thank you for your public service, which is outstanding, distinguished, and thank you for, again, committing to serve the public. And with that, I will adjourn the hearing. Thank you.